Let's do this thing. Hello, everybody, and welcome to ATP Insights, where we covered the most important tech news in Asia. Today is Monday, the 6th of July, 2026. Let's get to our topics for today. We're going to talk about Microsoft and Lightstorm building an India to Southeast Asia AI undersea cable. That's going to be really interesting. And China's Z.AI, which we spent a lot of time talking about, seems to be catching up to Anthropic and OpenAI as well. And this is going to also be very, very important. And as always, we've got another great show filled with some amazing guests today. We're going to start with Manoj Dugar, Head of Global Payment Solutions, Asia, ex-Greater China at HSBC. He's going to join us to talk about how treasury leaders are modernizing infrastructure as real-time rails, digital assets, and practical AI move into day-to-day corporate finance. We're also going to welcome Devine, Senior Regional Director, APAC at Yardi Systems, to discuss how integrated real estate technology and artificial intelligence will help property companies operate more efficiently, make better decisions, and deliver stronger customer experiences. Next, we will talk to Jeremy Ma, the founder and CEO of NeuXP, to cover how AI-powered fintech ecosystems will help businesses operate more efficiently, serve customers more intelligently, and scale across borders. And then Lars Jankowfsky, founder at Gradion, he and I are going to talk about how production-grade AI governance, security, and agentic systems help companies turn AI into measurable operational leverage. Don't miss the conversation with Lars as well. He's pretty amazing. He and I have known each other for a while. Later in the program, we'll be joined by Christopher Smith, founder and CEO at Quantus, not the airline, to explore how post-quantum financial infrastructure will help businesses protect data, transactions, and digital assets before today's encryption assumptions break. And finally, Jeff Kuo, founder and CEO at Ragic, will join us to talk about how AI-powered no-code databases will help companies turn everyday business users into builders of useful, actual systems, just how to give people access to stuff. And before we do that, let's hear from our presenting sponsor today, Twilio. Twilio is the secure and scalable platform to build amazing customer engagement without the complexity, with the AI-driven workflows you need to connect. They are trusted by over 300,000 businesses. It is simply the platform that makes more possible. Visit Twilio.com to start building today, and let's get to some news. Let's do it. Okay. Microsoft and Lightstorm are going to build an India to Southeast Asia undersea cable. Okay. They are helping to build a cable that's called I2SEA, a new 3,600 kilometer submarine underneath the ocean cable connecting India, Malaysia, and Singapore. And just so you know who's involved, it's going to be Lightstorm, right, which is a telecom startup, Microsoft, Singtel, Tata Communications, NEC is probably going to provide like some of the technology here, ASEAN Cable Ship, and Lightstorm is going to act as the majority owner, and NEC, as I said, is the system supplier. The cable itself, and this is interesting too, is designed specifically for artificial intelligence, for cloud, for hyperscale, for GPU infrastructure, and it's going to help with enterprise workloads across the India, Southeast Asia corridor. You can just imagine just like how important that corridor is. I would be surprised, frankly, if there are no other cables that already do this, but if there aren't, you can see why this would be super necessary. And what's interesting to me as well is, we spend so much time talking about the software build out here in the AI space. I can hear some clicking in the background. And this is actually the physical build out of the AI economy between India and Southeast Asia. And I like this as well, right? Because there's so much talk about like we have virtual meetings, we have virtual this, we have virtual that, but I like when things actually get built out physically. I want to see the physical manifestation of artificial intelligence. And this cable under the ground is going to connect India's east coast, okay, into Singapore's cloud interconnect ecosystem and Malaysia's growing data center corridor, while giving Lightstorm customers onward access into its Indian terrestrial network of more than 30,000 kilometers and 80 plus data centers. This is like real physical connectivity between the digital ecosystems in India, in Singapore, and in Malaysia. Very important. Okay. The cable, just so you know where it lands in India, Machilipatnam and South Chennai, with Machilipatnam positioned as a short subsea route into Hyderabad. Lightstorm says the system is targeted to be ready for service in Q4 2029. So you can just see Q4 2029. We're in Q3 2026. So this is going to take about 3 years to build. But just think about just technically how hard it is. We take this for granted. I did this actually a few days ago, and I recommend everybody do this too. Just go to Google or go to ChatGPT. Actually, go to ChatGPT. Try this there, or go to Anthropic and try it. And just give the chat a prompt to say, draw me a dynamic map of all, or even a static map, right, of all the undersea internet connectivity cables. I think you would be shocked. Just shocked. I mean, do the same thing. I've spoken about this before too, but do the same thing for just like, show me, and this you do on a dynamic basis. Show me all the ships at sea right now and where they're going. I think you'd just be dumbfounded to see just like how busy the ocean is above the ocean and below the ocean. Okay, like I said, this is going to be ready in Q4 2029, and it's designed for low latency transmission between Singapore, Malaysia, and Hyderabad. Clearly, India, if it's not already there, is becoming a major artificial intelligence and cloud infrastructure market. We've talked about this before as well. Microsoft has committed $17.5 billion to India between 2026 and 2029 for cloud and AI infrastructure, cloud skilling, and operations. While Google has also announced roughly $15 billion in AI hub in Andhra Pradesh from 2026 to 2030. And let's be clear about this. This India, Singapore, Malaysia connectivity is actually really important. And we always mention, Microsoft is making a $17.5 billion investment, and Google's making a $15 billion investment in India. But we spoke about this on ATP over this year already. That doesn't include the investment that both companies are making in Thailand, that both companies announced making in Korea, that both companies announced making in Japan. I think 10, 20, 30, 40, it's got to be 50 or $60 billion each in the region. Asia matters. Hashtag Asia matters. Okay, it really does. And it's going to matter more and more going forward. And remember, that has nothing to do with like all the data centers and all the artificial intelligence stuff that's getting built in China, which actually at the end of the day ends up being its own kind of domestic market. Okay, fair enough. Let's dig a little bit deeper. What does this cable alone tell us about the way AI infrastructure is being built in Asia? Well, look, we mentioned India, East Coast connection to Malaysia and to Singapore. It's really becoming like not a domestic thing anymore, right? So like India can build its own data centers. We talked about Thailand building data centers. Singapore, I won't say it has an issue, but I mean, there's not a lot of land available for building data centers in Singapore, although you could go to the countries surrounding Singapore, just north in Malaysia, and just east, I believe, as well. But this cable, which is meant to connect India, Malaysia, and Singapore, means that compute, storage, cloud services, and other enterprise workloads can move back and forth in that corridor in a way that wasn't as efficiently possible as it's going to be once 2029 comes around. And the participation from Microsoft, right, tells us that hyperscalers are not just buying capacity after the networks are built. This is actually really interesting, right? Because we did do a segment, on AGTP about how Facebook was thinking about getting into the sort of excess data center capacity and excess processing compute capacity. Now, to be fair, they don't have any excess capacity. But the idea is that their infrastructure alone, if they build enough of it, should have excess capacity. They're anticipating things. And I believe this is what's happening here as well. There should be a ton of AI and compute traffic going back and forth between India, Singapore, and Malaysia. And they're not waiting to buy that capacity until the networks are built here with Microsoft, right? Remember, they have Azure. They have their own AI models. They've got a whole bunch of stuff, and they've committed to building not just, as I said, in India, but in the entire Asian region. They're going to want to make sure that they have connectivity and that they understand where their capacity is coming from as that's happening. And Microsoft is helping shape sort of the physical network that's underneath the artificial intelligence and cloud growth. Let's be fair, though, right? This is also important for Lightstorm. This is not just like generic bandwidth that they're talking about. I mentioned this earlier, but Lightstorm is describing this as AI connectivity, a system that links subsea, so underneath the ocean capacity, with terrestrial fiber and data center and interconnects inside India. Super important stuff. And the broader market context supports this idea, right? Like it's really important if you think about it to get that information from India to Singapore and to Malaysia. I would argue actually more Singapore than to Malaysia, but maybe to get that cable to Singapore, you kind of have to go through Malaysia if you understand how the geography works. But either way, it's really important for both of these countries. Yeah. New submarine cable investment planned for service between 2026 and 2029. It's going to cost $16 billion, according to Telegeography, showing that the AI and cloud build-out is pushing a new cycle of physical internet investment. And as I said before, it's pretty easy to build out software and virtual connectivity. But once you decide you're going to make physical connectivity between regions, particularly something like a 3,600 undersea cable, now you're making a real commitment. I mean, and again, for people that don't know this, do a little bit of work on this. They don't just like drop a cable at the bottom of the ocean and just hope everything's okay. It's almost like they're building a tunnel underneath the ocean and then inserting the cable into it. So if you think about the way cables get laid today for optic fiber or even for telephone cables, you see them like digging up roads everywhere. So imagine doing that undersea. And then imagine why it takes so long to do it. I don't know what the depth of the ocean is between India and Singapore, but I'm sure it's pretty deep. And then to go underneath the ocean, but then underneath the ground at the bottom of the ocean and lay a cable underneath there. And then the redundancy that's necessary to make sure that continues to work, right? Because again, this is like the data center space. If one of the chips goes out, you got to get somebody up there, which is why you have to build multiple redundancies, right? Just in case. So if you just want this like seamless fall over or switch over, my guess is they're probably putting 2 or 3 cables underneath, or at least maybe more even, right? So that there's constant connectivity. And if any part of that cable or entire piece of cable goes out, there's backup down there already, so they don't have to send like somebody diving down there in a submarine to kind of fix it. And that's actually really important to understand. Now, the other question is, why is India's East Coast? Let's just take a quick look at a map, just so we can understand this, a map of India. Because I just want to see where Bangalore is. Yeah, so you can see, right? So why is the east coast of India becoming strategically important, right? As I said, this cable lands in Machilapatnam in South Chennai, giving the system a direct path into India's southern and eastern data center clusters. Lightstorm says that these towns offer short subsea access into Hyderabad, which is becoming one of India's key AI and cloud infrastructure cities, which frankly should not be a big surprise. The conversation from a technology standpoint around Hyderabad has actually been going for a long time. And Google's planned AI hub in Visakhapatnam, Andhra Pradesh, reinforces the importance of this side of India, the east coast, the east side of India. And Google says their project is approximately $15 billion over 5 years, and its largest investment in India to date. So just think about this. If Google and other companies are going to continue to invest in India at that scale, particularly the data center build out, the AI data center build out, and this connectivity between Singapore and Malaysia is just going to continue to be like super duper important. Okay, Reuters also reported in May 2026 that Microsoft's largest data center in India was on track to go live like now in mid 2026 as part of its wider India AI infrastructure push. Don't underestimate the importance of the second or the first largest company in the world, depending on how many people get born on any particular day. India, from a technology standpoint, is going to continue to grow in importance, and the connectivity that other countries have into India digitally is also going to continue to be more and more important. And the east coast of India is important because it shortens the logical path, right? In other words, if you wanted to connect the west coast of India to Singapore and Malaysia, you'd have to probably drop a cable across the country. So underground across the country, into the ocean, underneath the ocean, then into Malaysia, and then into Singapore. Just structurally and logistically, it's just going to be so much harder to do that. But it shortens the path. If you do it from the east coast of India, it shortens the path into Singapore, and then frankly into the rest of Southeast Asia. And that's really important. And it changes the economics and the performance profile for enterprises building artificial intelligence services just across the region. I mean, that just ends up being super important, right? And I guess the real logical question here is, what are we trying to do? One of my favorite catchphrases, what are we doing? Right? So what are we doing here? What are we trying to solve? What's the problem we're trying to solve by laying this cable? And I would ask, like, why hasn't it been done before? And I think it's more just like, it's not just internet growth, to be fair. And remember, Lightstorm is selling this as AI enabled or AI specific cabling. There is a need. There's already a need for predictable, high capacity, low latency connectivity between Singapore, Malaysia, AI regions, data centers, cloud platforms, and enterprise customers. If you just think about the number of Asian headquarters in Singapore alone, plus the subs that are in Malaysia, and the connectivity that all that's going to offer to the rest of Southeast Asia with Singapore as the main hub, it's just going to be really, really important from a business perspective. And India's data center market as well is entering a very, very heavy build-out phase. According to Macquarie's research, right, so a big Australian bank and investment bank, estimated that India had about 1.4 gigawatts of operational data center capacity, another exact same size of that under construction, and around 5 gigawatts in planning, with capacity potentially doubling by 2027 and rising fivefold by 2030 if projects move quickly. India is not only a heavily populated country, but it's just massive. Like, just massive. Again, I recommend everybody who hasn't done this to go take a look at a map of India. And the fact that they're building out their data center businesses should not be surprising to anybody. The subsea capacity, it also ends up being a resilience issue. India currently has 17 active submarine cables. Just 17. It could be 34, right? With a maximum potential capacity of 906 terabits and at least 10 more publicly announced, right? So that gets us to what, like 28? I don't know why they just don't continuously build these things out, right? And for enterprises, the result is practical. Definitely is practical. If you just think about any latency you have on the internet today is annoying. I mean, wasn't it Louis C.K. who once said, he made this joke about his cell phone and Wi-Fi connectivity on the plane? He's like, why is it so slow? Why is it so slow? You're on an airplane. You've got a tiny device in your hand and your connectivity is going from Earth to space and then onto your, how long do you expect it to take? It's not magic, right? But again, for enterprises, any latency is bad. For banks, for financial services companies, for anybody that's involved in trading, any latency is bad. I used to trade from home. And when the first sort of trade from home systems were installed, and I installed some of them actually when I was in Morgan Stanley, the key point we wanted to make sure was that there was enough connectivity so there was no latency. If we made a decision, particularly from a trading perspective, that decision got affected as fast as humanly possible. And again, when we started building trading connectivity directly to the exchanges and doing co-locations, we wanted to make sure that our connectivity was less than a second, less than a picosecond, actually. We wanted to make sure that the acknowledgements we got back were super fast. So for enterprises, these results are definitely very, very practical. Better connectivity, as I've been mentioning, lowers the friction of running any kind of business, but any kind of workload you have that's digital across India, Singapore, Malaysia, especially in cases, as I've mentioned, where performance, right, latency, redundance, and data movement at speed, at scale, matter and are important. And then you just want to ask, what does this say? What does this building of this cable or the installation of this undersea cable say about Singapore, Malaysia's role in the AI infrastructure map? I mean, it's hard to overestimate or overcompensate for Singapore as a critical cloud interconnect hub for the region. But the regional map is spreading outward. This I2 SEA cable connects Singapore directly into Malaysia's emerging data center corridor around KL and into India's East Coast AI regions. And interestingly enough, Malaysia itself is becoming more important because data center capacity in the region is no longer just a Singapore story. Can't be. And again, Malaysia, a country of 20-something million people, there's plenty of space there to build data centers too. And I don't think that that's going to end. Constraints around land, power, and cost are pushing more infrastructure into neighboring markets while keeping Singapore central as a network and cloud exchange point. I mean, Singapore's never going to go away. It's always going to be the hub in this region. There's just no way around it. Anybody who's ever been here, anybody who's ever done business here knows that Singapore is just going to continue to be the business hub, the AI hub, the cloud hub, just the hub of the entire region. Japan and China end up being kind of their own animals, but the rest of the region connects into Singapore for sure. And I wouldn't say finally, but like the consortium structure matters, which is why I mentioned it at the beginning of this segment. Singtel, obviously very important to have there. Tata Communications in India, they bring regional telecom credibility. And Microsoft brings hyperscale demand, and Lightstorm brings India-focused AI connectivity. And that's actually really, really important. And the whole combination of all of these players is a good indicator of how these projects are likely to get built. I always like to say nobody succeeds alone. Don't be fooled by that at all. A lot of people will say like, oh, this was my idea, that was my idea. Nobody succeeds alone. The best leaders have the best teammates. The best visionaries also have the best teammates. And in this case, the best partners. It's really important to have a good partnership. This whole combination of how these projects will likely get built includes cloud companies, right? Carriers, infrastructure specialists, and system suppliers working together. To me, the key here is for someone who's, again, made a little bit of a bet by living in Southeast Asia for the past like decade and a bit, is that Southeast Asia is becoming part of the same artificial intelligence infrastructure conversation as India. It just is. I mean, there are half as many people that live in Southeast Asia that live in India. Yeah, I'd say about almost exactly half, 670 million people here, 1.2, 1.3 billion people live in India. And it's a fast-growing market. If you look at the economies, again, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in Thailand, include Singapore in there, include the Philippines, although it is separated by an ocean, but the Philippines is still part of Southeast Asia, and don't discount Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. All right, Cambodia and Laos, small countries, but still growing digitally very, very quickly. And Vietnam, obviously, is becoming sort of a technology development hub as well. And that's actually going to end up being really, really important too. Okay. Let's just keep going on this just a little bit more, yeah? 1 second. So I just want to go over this again. Building this cable and having this connectivity between Singapore, India, and Malaysia is actually going to end up being really, really important. And again, with the fast-paced growth of India's digital economy and with the fast-paced growth of the digital economies in the entire region of Southeast Asia, with Singapore as a hub, is going to mean that that cable actually is going to be really important. And my guess would be, look, we already saw that India already has 17 undersea cables already. And as I've mentioned, I think that could go as high as I think it could go way higher. And as I said at the beginning of this segment, I highly recommend everybody go and look at like what that connectivity actually looks like in this region. Because I think you would be surprised, although not super duper surprised, but I think you would be surprised by just like how much connectivity there is and how many undersea cables there are there. It'd be interesting to find out from Lightstorm why this cable itself is like AI enabled. It probably has more bandwidth as well, and maybe less latency too. And if you think about it, so India as well is trying to build out its data center infrastructure. And there have been plenty of stories, if you think about it, like if you think about the things that go into building a data center, what is there? So there are the chips that really, the GPUs and the CPUs that run the entire data center. But then there's also the power. Then there's the swappability of all the servers that go in there. And at some level, if you are building data centers, you're also then building a supply chain. And I think this is actually going to end up being really important, not just for India, but in any place where data centers are going to get built out. So this is going to be true actually for Malaysia. We mentioned earlier that we think that there's going to be some build out of data centers in Malaysia, which is why this connectivity between India, Malaysia, and Singapore, as land in Singapore becomes more scarce and building in Singapore becomes more expensive, not just from a land perspective, but from a construction perspective, and also from a where do we get the energy to build this stuff perspective. But if you think about what goes into building a data center, it's not unlikely that a lot of these countries are doing this so they can then sort of arrange their supply chain or build their supply chain around the components that go into building this. So think about this right now. If you are India and you believe your digital economy is going to continue to grow apace or even outpace the rest of the world, you're going to need data processing power that the rest of the world could not even conceive. Again, because India itself just domestically is so large. And if you go and then look at the second tier, third tier, and fourth tier cities in India, besides the fact that there's plenty of room for physical growth there, there's also a lot of room for digital growth. I mean, we say this in Thailand as well, don't underestimate the gap between the digital growth in the top tier cities in some of the countries in Asia, right? So Bangkok is unbelievable from a digital infrastructure standpoint. There's nowhere you can go in Bangkok and not have some kind of super high speed 5G digital connectivity, whether that's on your phone or even if it's just Wi-Fi connectivity, 100 megabits, 50 megabits up and down, you can get from sort of any coffee shop you want to in Thailand. No problem at all. So just think about like building out of the supply chains there. That's actually going to be really, really important for these people and for these countries. Okay. Before we get to our guests, let's have a quick message from our second sponsor, Boomi. Got it. Okay, before we do that, let's just continue this conversation about the data centers and building out the supply chain. Right, it's going to be really important for countries like India, but also for countries like Malaysia to build out the supply chain as they continue to build out their data centers as well. They want to make sure that they have access to the components on kind of an ongoing basis. And right now, I think that these things are kind of getting built on like an ad hoc basis. And to prevent them from becoming ad hoc and to prevent them from being to make them as efficient as humanly possible, they are going to have to build a supply chain that actually makes sense. Okay, let's get to Boomi now. Boomi is the data activation company for artificial intelligence. It powers the agentic enterprise by bringing data to life across your business. Trusted by over 30,000 customers and supported by a network of 800 plus partners, Boomi helps organizations of all sizes achieve agility, efficiency, and innovation at scale. Let's welcome our first guest today, Manoj Dugar, Head of Global Payment Solutions Asia, ex-Greater China at HSBC. Let's bring him in. Manoj, how are you doing today? It's okay. It's nice to meet you. It's great to see you there. Look, we wanted to have you on because we wanted to talk about how leaders are modernizing infrastructures, real-time rails, digital assets, and practical AI move into day-to-day corporate finance, right? So there's been a lot of like, let's try this, let's try that.
Yes.
But we want to move this stuff into day-to-day finance. And before we do that, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about payments at HSBC that people may not be aware of, actually.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. First and foremost, thank you for having me on the call as well.
It's my pleasure.
Payment is a strategically important vertical within HSBC.
For sure.
It's if you look at our CEO as well as our corporate and institutional banking CEO's ambition, we want to be the number one transaction banking franchise, and payment sits at the center of that as well. Clearly, the payment business continues to evolve, and that's where technology has played an instrumental part. In fact, in one of our recent Investor Day seminar, we talked about our payment business is how technology is transforming the payments business as well. So super critical business, very core to HSBC franchise, ongoing investment as the payment infrastructure landscape changes.
Got it. So artificial intelligence has been talked about in financial services for a long time. And to be fair, I remember when I left financial services over a decade ago, we were still talking about it. But Treasury itself, let's talk a little bit about Treasury, if that's okay with you. It's been a little bit slow to move. Where's the gap in the Treasury space between like the promise and what's actually being deployed today?
Thanks, Michael. Very relevant question. And as I speak to many of the treasurers and CFOs, this is one of the topics of discussion, both at roundtable conferences as well as in the boardroom. If you really look at Treasury and AI right now, there is a gap between what the promise is and what actions are being taken. And our job as a trusted banking partner is to really help narrow that gap. In fact, we did a survey with some of our clients end of last year, early this year, and almost 70% of the Treasury professionals believe that AI could potentially replace up to a quarter of their Treasury task. And when you ask where AI really adds value, it's the cash flow forecasting, which comes on top of the mind, followed by receivable reconciliation, FX risk management, client experience journey. But the action hasn't caught up, as you rightly alluded to. Around half of the companies, I would say, have not yet deployed AI in Treasury at all. And fewer than 1 in 10 have actually embedded it into day-to-day Treasury workflows. So clearly, there is a gap between promise and action. So the next question always is that what's holding the teams back?
That's exactly right. I'll let you do this from now on. You can just ask the questions. Go ahead, because that was my next one.
Sure.
I love it.
And I would say the biggest hurdle by far is integrating with some of the existing systems. 70% of the corporate treasurers talk about some of the challenges with their existing system and platforms, how it integrates with them. Cost, I would say, is one of the other next big factor. And probably the lack of expertise around how some of these AI tools could potentially be deployed in their treasury processes. And all of these, I would say, is probably to a great extent connected. Many treasuries are really running on ERP and TMS platforms, which are probably designed in a pre-AI era. And modern AI tools don't just necessarily plug in without real work sometimes. And that's where you need the middleware, you need a clear data strategy to ensure that you can really take advantage of some of these treasury tools and the AI tools as well.
So can I ask you this just again from your perspective? And I don't want anything like 100% concrete because the real answer is I don't know. But just from a timeline perspective, the AI space itself is moving so fast, right? So it's like you're just sitting there as a treasurer doing your job, doing your work. You're working really hard. Your team's like kicking it, right? Everybody's trying to do work. Your clients are using all the tools that they have to be able to do this. And then they just kind of look out the window and a train goes by and it's going like 3 times the speed. And they're like, whoa, we've got to catch up to them. They want to catch up to them. But like what has to change internally, right? You said maybe the systems from an integration standpoint aren't ready to do it. I mean, the systems that they were using just frankly weren't built for MCP and API connectivities, right? So they can't do all that kind of stuff. But like, what kind of timeline do you think they have to be on, particularly when the AI stuff itself is moving so fast?
Yeah, I think the first and foremost important aspect, Michael, is to ensure that the foundation is strong, because the real benefit of AI could be only once your foundation is strong. And when I talk about foundation, it's about the data quality, the data sets, the data assets which clients have. And AI is only as good as the data it learns from. And the treasury data today is scattered across, whether it's bank portfolios, ERPs, and legacy systems. So that I think is important. And that's where the corporate CFOs and treasurers are investing to ensure that they can really get benefit of the AI tools itself. The second aspect is about the use cases. What are really some of the problem statements which we are trying to solve for?
Right.
AI is not an answer to every aspect, but as I was talking about, whether it's forecasting, whether it's FX risk management, whether it's client experience, what are some of the problem statements? And once you have the strong foundation, you have the data assets in place, you have invested in some of your technology tools, you identify your problem statements, and that's where you try and adopt some of these AI technologies. In fact, we actually published a thought leadership article around some of the AI pieces itself, and where have companies started deploying some of these AI tools as well.
Right.
So clearly, early days, but the beginning is already done. And as you rightly said, the promise is immense. And clearly, I would say not very long, far off, but in the near term, we would start seeing adoption of some of these tools in the treasury processes.
And how does this get tested in a real-time environment, right? So in an ideal situation, you'd set up sort of like a parallel treasury system. You'd create sort of an internal sandbox because you want to be able to test this stuff when money's involved. You know what I mean? Like, you know, the way this works. Like, if you're a penny off in a settlement for something, it's not going to settle because it's just wrong, right? So how do you test this stuff so that you can get confidence that all of this work that you've done, not you, but that one has done, to make the systems ready for it, to find the right use cases, that now you can start deploying things at scale?
Yeah. And Michael, that doesn't necessarily apply just to AI tools. It applies
Correct.
to any of the underlying technology which Treasury is deploying itself. And many of the solutions from a bank perspective, we are trying to see how we make it easier for clients to adapt some of these technology tools. And I can talk about some of the API work which we have done on the API space itself. How many of these APIs have got embedded in the client journey itself, whether it's in their ERP or TMS systems, how they are adopted it, or probably leveraging some of the front-end platforms of the banks to adopt some of these technology tools itself. We are clearly, obviously, any of these technology tools, when they are deployed, it's important to ensure that it's working seamlessly end-to-end. It's not just about the integration piece, but the end-to-end journey of the transaction is working seamlessly as well. And that's where many of the tests which are being done more real-time, instant, really helps ensure that it's building out to scale as they adopt these technologies. So I would say applies to any of the technology which our clients are adopting at this point of time.
So one of the things that's become and really popular, and you just kind of triggered this in my head, if you don't mind, is some of your biggest AI companies, right, like Anthropic and Cursor and OpenAI and Palantir kind of started doing this at the beginning. They were the pioneers in this. They started using something called FDEs, right? So like forward deployed engineers. But as a concept, do big banks think about, hey, maybe if we're deploying like all these sort of whiz-bang new tools, maybe we actually need to send somebody to our client for 3 months, 6 months, or whatever it is, so that they can get more comfortable using these tools that we're rolling out. And then we can bring people back in as they get more comfortable using the tools that we're developing for them on the artificial intelligence stack. Does that make sense as well?
I would say, Michael, the analogy which you are talking about, it applies to certain sector of clients. It's not a uniform application as well. The different treasuries are different stages of maturity.
For sure.
When you think about some of the large companies who've adopted ERP and TMS systems and used it at scale, in some cases could adopt some of these technologies at a faster pace. However, there are some companies who are probably growing in this space could really leapfrog using these technologies as well. And it could be a combination, and they will have talent which is there within the organization which they could rely on, and in some cases use intermediaries, the banks like us, who can help support them in the transition journey. So I would say it doesn't apply uniformly across our client sets, but yes, it's one of the ways in which some of these technologies can be adopted by our clients.
Do you think that geography matters in this concept of maturity, or do you think that that's sort of unbalanced as well?
I would say what really drives the pace of AI adoption isn't so much about where treasury is based, but it's all about how mature the treasury is. And when we say maturity, it usually shows up in the basics, whether it's standardized processes, it's about clear ownership and governance, and clean and connected data flowing straight from the ERP and TMS in the bank, instead of being rekeyed or manually stitched together. So in general, as I was mentioning about, clearly you have larger corporates who are further along the ERP and TMS journey and have broader automation too. Less mature setups, often smaller teams, tend to lean quite heavily on maybe spreadsheets and manual reconciliation. The challenge there is it much harder to operationalize AI consistently and to trust the outputs with real confidence. And that's the key point. AI isn't a shortcut around weak foundations. It works best when you plug it into business as usual, measure the outcomes, and put the right controls around it. I think that is more important than just the geography.
Do you think there's a way for some of these AI tools to sort of democratize the power that Treasury can accomplish, even for, like you said, smaller teams that may be working off of spreadsheets? If they can figure out a way, because we did this at Morgan Stanley years ago, right? We figured out a way to create sort of connectivity between real-time data and spreadsheets and other systems. I wouldn't say that it was hacked together, but once we figured out how to do it, we could get pretty robust connectivity between Excel and some other sort of spreadsheets back into other real-time systems. Do you think that there's a democratization taking place here in the Treasury space too because of artificial intelligence?
So I would say I would probably put it a little more broadly. Technology is playing a really important role in transforming the treasury processes. And that's why when we speak to corporate treasurers and CFOs, as they're going through whether it's their technology transformation journey,
Yep.
their ERP harmonization journey, that's where they are looking at to try and optimize their working capital. That's the number one priority, clearly. And clearly, technology is playing an instrumental part in it, whether it's adoption of AI tools, whether it's adoption of some of the API tools. In fact, actually, when we were speaking to corporate clients, probably 5 years back, less than 10% of the clients had adopted API tools. But today, probably more than 40% of the clients are using API, virtual solutions, and digital solutions to really transform the treasury. So I would say technology has played an instrumental part in transforming the treasury landscape for many of the corporate treasurers. And especially with such a lean treasury team across globally, for most of the corporate treasury, this plays a very instrumental part in their treasury transformation journey.
Do you want to talk a little bit before I let you go about stable coins and how they're going to change the settlement landscape going forward? And then I'll let you go.
Sure. We talked about AI, which is one of the topics. The second most important topic in treasurers and CFOs' office is around tokenization. And emerging technologies, whether it's blockchain, tokenization, applied to traditional form of assets and currencies, are leading to a structural change in both the forms of money and assets, as well as how money is moved and assets are held. You hear about whether it's tokenization, whether you hear about tokenized deposits, stable coins, CBDCs, which are playing a role. I would put it a little more at a broader level. When we look at digital assets and currencies, these are separate but really complementary capabilities with some overlaps. Digital assets are aligned to investment instruments, and digital currencies have more direct applications to payments. And these technologies can really help modernize treasury processes, whether it's 24/7 settlement, programmable payments, reducing the cross-border friction which exists in the payments landscapes as well, are clearly opportunities where some of these platforms will play an instrumental part going forward as well. I would presume that each of them have their own role to play and will probably coexist. You'll see tokenized deposits, how it's helping the treasury process on the corporate side move money 24/7. Those are some of the real use cases which we are implementing with clients. And on the other hand, you have stable coins, which will probably play an instrumental part in the digital commerce journey for some of our clients as well. So clearly, these technologies and tools will play an instrumental part in how treasury is conducted, as well as how digital assets and currencies could complement each other going forward.
Are we concerned at all about how stablecoins will further the concentration in dollar-traded assets to the detriment of other currencies, or we're not worried about that?
From our perspective, we are clearly very bullish on the entire tokenized deposit space. That's very an important area where we think we can help modernize the settlement workflow of some of our clients using their 24/7 processes and near instant and programmable payments. That's one area. And we are looking at supporting some of the stablecoin players who are probably helping use stablecoins for settlement in their digital commerce journey itself. Those are the areas where we are really bullish and investing our dollars to support the ecosystem.
Got it. Okay, Manoj, thank you very much for coming and doing this today. I went a little bit over time with you just because I wanted to make sure that we covered all the stuff we said we were going to cover. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. Nice speaking to you.
It's my complete pleasure.
See you.
Okay, Martin, let's bring in Bernie. Bernie, how are you? I am doing very well. You can hear me okay? Awesome. It's so weird to be called sir. Okay, look, Bertie, thank you so much for coming on and doing this today. We really appreciate it. We wanted to talk to you about how integrated real estate tech and AI will help property companies operate more efficiently, make better decisions, and just deliver stronger customer experiences. Before we dig deeper into that, tell us a little bit more about Yardi Systems.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yardi Systems, great business, been around for 40 plus years. When I talk to our clients about, why do you partner with us, it comes down to a couple of key things. One is that extreme focus on real estate. It's the only vertical that we focus on.
Yep.
And we do it very well, have always been in real estate. Two is the fact that we have a view of a platform that should support the business. So not just single point solutions, but in fact, a platform right across the business, an ERP, if you will, and keeping everything in one database. Three, I think, is just the strength of our business, 40 plus years of growth, and with a single shareholder, investing most of that back into the business. So, it was interesting. A couple of weeks ago, our CEO came out and said that he had a discussion with our chairman shareholder about we were seeing a fourfold increase in productivity in our programming teams.
Oh, wow.
1,600 people. And our CEO said to our chairman, said, "What do you want me to do with that?" He said, "Make sure customers get better service and do more products.
But
don't make anyone redundant."
But this is actually really important, because in a way I feel like for the first time I'm talking to a company that's been around for 40 years, you said, right? Do I have that right?
Yep.
And yet is not apparently, I mean, we've only been speaking for a few minutes, but it's apparently not afraid of adopting new technology to ensure that their customers have better experiences, first of all, but second of all, that their own employees have a better experience as well. What has to happen, or what has to be true inside of a company like Yardi Systems, so that when something new comes along, there's not like, that's not the way we do that here, but there's another mindset, which is, how do we deploy that here to become even better at what we do than we were before? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think for us, it's always a case of we've seen ourselves since the very beginning as the innovation partner for the real estate industry. We see that's our responsibility, is to innovate at enterprise level for the real estate industry. We've got, look at our business, North America, 15 million multifamily apartments on the platform.
Yep.
200 million square meters of commercial real estate on the platform. We've got by far the largest portfolio of real estate globally on our platform anywhere. So that makes a difference, and it gives us the ability to do, to leverage that and to do better. And I think, back to your question about AI, our focus and really what the position that puts us in is that we're not doing little point solutions. We actually own the stack right across the business.
Right. So that's the other thing I want to ask you is, like, how does AI reshape property management and real estate workflows? If you can talk about it now, right? Because
Sure.
In general terms, it's you can understand it makes us more productive, blah, blah, blah. But like in real sort of micro terms, how does it reshape what's going on at scale?
I think that really the key thing there is that what we've seen is, through 40 years of automating process, we have done a great job of helping our customers do it better, get better data, stay in control, have an overview, all of those things one does with automating process. But by bringing in AI and saying, we're not going to just throw this on the top, right? We are actually going to build it in as a foundation layer to the whole platform.
Right.
What it changes is the fact that there are now things that, although we'd automated the process, it still needed a lot of human effort to drive the process. But we're seeing multiple places where we can replace that human effort with AI.
Give me an example.
Give the humans control. Oh, a simple thing, like you're a senior person in a real estate company and you're approving invoices. You get 200 invoices to approve. Traditionally, you had to go through and review every single one of those 200 invoices to approve. Yep. We've got an AI now that says, hang on, 170 of these, not only are they compliant with your delegations, but they match the patterns of history. In other words, it's the right amount, it's the right property, it's the right vendor. But here's 30 that I think are a problem. Can you just look at those and I'll approve the rest? Now, I've just saved 20 minutes, straight up.
Yeah, or more, and across the board for a bunch of different people. What has to happen, on the client side for them to modernize their tech stack to be able to take advantage of the tools that Yardi is building for them to be more efficient and more productive?
And I think I'd answer that in 2 steps. First
Please.
of all, is for not just for Yardi, but adopting any new tech.
Yeah.
Right? Naturally has to be open to change. And the biggest look, I've been doing this for 40 years as well. Me and our founder have both been in the game for that long. And what I've learned over 40 years is it's fear of the unknown. You know, the biggest impediment to adopting change is fear of the unknown.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you can educate, if you can communicate, you will bring most of the people along most of the way. And if you don't make it too difficult or too painful, they'll get there, right? And then secondly, for us, we have this, as I said, really strong view that we're the core foundational book of record for your real estate business.
Right.
And therefore, you know, whatever accounting system I'm afraid you're just going to have to rip the Band-Aid off and get rid of it and put in ours. And then that enables the entire platform.
So I have to presume that there are some of your clients that have been with you, if not for the entire 40 years, let's just say for 37 of those years, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And I presume every few years you come to them and just say things like, okay, you need to reorganize your data. And you're like, here come these guys from Yardi again. And maybe you want to move from stuff to your cloud and like it was already complex enough. And now you come back and you're like, okay, artificial intelligence. And like, when are you guys ever going to stop? And I'm saying this in this kind of a sarcastic way. You understand, right?
Oh, yeah.
But like, what differentiates the guys and gals that are just like, bring it on, and the ones that are like, when does this end?
And there's no question. We've had clients come to us and say, hey, can you slow down?
Right. For sure. Enough.
But our view is that, you know, we'll help clients catch up. And we've got clients who are absolutely, you know, champing at the bit to do the next thing. And that's really a key part of it. And it is that attitude that says, I want to be part of the leading, you know, the leading edge of this business. When I look at the sort of when we look at the top 20, top 50 real estate companies globally or in almost any market, one of the key differentiators that says they are where they are is because senior management from the board, the CEO down, believe in good process. They see real value in good process. And then they bring us in because that's what we deliver. And that has contributed significantly, you know, that belief in good process has contributed significantly to their success if you map their history.
Have you seen clients, and again, or I would say cohorts of clients, where the ones that, and again, this is on average, right? Because you can be an adopter of early technology and mess it up, and then that could actually kill your business. But the ones with the mindset of like, we need to try the newest stuff because it's going to make us more effective. And frankly, I know that when I've deployed new technology into a business where I was already good at something, it made me way better at it. And then it made me better than my competition as well. And if I hadn't done it, I would have kind of fallen off to the wayside. Are you seeing the same thing in the real estate management business, in the sense that for your clients that are just like, I am AI ready, I am technology ready, I will do whatever the next new thing is, if it makes sense, right? Obviously, if it's the metaverse, we're not doing this, right? Because that's silliness. You're laughing, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. The whole point here is I think, and you've got
do you see separation? Do you know what I mean? Between the companies that do it and the ones that don't, and the ones that don't are like, oh no, maybe we should have, kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. But the other thing I'd say is, from our perspective, we look at it because we're the ERP platform for enterprise grade and small real estate companies.
Yeah.
And the enterprise grade, you're talking about organizations with thousands of properties, thousands of users. We touch every part of their business, from construction through leasing, through accounting, through, you know, everything, right? Forecasting, the whole shooting match. And for us to come to those clients and say, hey, yeah, here's the latest thing, why don't you take this on? It turns into a major transformation piece.
Oh, it's a nightmare at some level, right?
We can't attack that lightly, right? We have to come to it with a level of responsibility and a level of certainty that we're delivering programs and tools that actually work. So it is about that trust of saying, you know, yes, you want to try the latest thing. So what I would say is that I think we're doing really well with getting things out there from an AI perspective. We are cautious because we don't want to just throw something at the wall and see if it sticks.
No.
We want to know that it's going to work.
Yeah, I mean, look, at some level, this is true for every company, but your customers deal with you because they trust you to make the right decisions as well. And they don't want you throwing stuff at them that either A, you haven't tested, but you wouldn't do, but you understand the point, right?
Yeah.
Or things that maybe you have tested but aren't 100% there and you roll it out anyway. No one's going to like this. And you can't be in business for 40 years and behave like that. But do you think it's easier at some level to roll new stuff out to a smaller company that can be more agile, that maybe doesn't have thousands or hundreds of thousands of properties on their platform? And if it's true that a smaller company can roll this stuff out faster, does it give them a chance to leapfrog a larger company that maybe is moving more slowly?
Look, I think there is some of that. We have, I guess a core of clients who we know are keen to try things. They'll take on a beta testing environment for us early, because they say, we want to do this, we want to understand it. But it's interesting, some of those will then dive in, test it, go, yep, we're good, roll it out. Some will dive in. And one in particular comes to mind, who they are always wanting to beta test, but it always takes them about 18 months to then roll it out. And it's not because the product doesn't work, it's just they know it's there, they know what it can do, but they're going to take their time to get the change management in place.
But so what is there something specific about a real estate company that makes it harder for them to roll stuff out? 18 months sounds like a really long time to me.
You're in an industry that doesn't move very fast, right? We've got the core product doesn't move very fast in 40 years, right? It's we've got buildings that have been on our platform for most of that time,
right?
So you can take that view, but at the same time, there was a big shift 6-7 years ago when MSCI put real estate into their indexes and forced all of the index investors, we've got to have real estate. So they went and found a bunch of GPs who had real estate and said, here's some money. And by the way, I'm used to reporting as if it's a stock exchange. So can I have hourly reports, please? And they're all the real estate companies. We do quarterly. Is that good?
Right. For the MSCI, fair enough.
So, there's been a massive change in attitude from investors into, major institutional real estate that is, as said, and dragged, encouraged, forced our clients to really focus on faster closing times, more accurate data, turning reports around, giving, near live data to their investors to review. COVID forced investors to really ask hard questions about what the hell's going on with this platform, what's going on with this asset, why is this a problem, all of that. And that's changed the culture in the industry significantly, to the point where now everyone really is demanding, I want good data, I want it now, and I need it homogenous because now I want to put AI in on top of it. A lot of what we've done in terms of connecting so we have our own internal AI that works with our data set, but it works with MCP protocols to talk to external AIs, right? So now you're getting a whole very different ball game that no one's ever seen before, and that's changing everything.
So how ready are typical real estate management or property management companies? Because you just talked about MCP like it's been around forever. This is the model context protocol. You just threw it out there like you were good. Can I have some potatoes, some ketchup, some MCP, and maybe a comb? Do you know what I mean? But like for slow moving property management companies, they might not even know what an API is, much less what an MCP is. So how do you work through that stuff as well?
Most of them know what an API is now. MCP is new. MCP is new, but they're getting there quickly, I think. But you've got this dichotomy of you're getting small companies turning up and banging on the door and saying, "Oh, yeah, I've got this AI thing." But it's really going back to, in some respects, the boom of prop tech, where you had clients had this question like, "Where is this vendor going to be in 12 months' time?"
Yeah, for sure.
And now it's a case of, what's going to happen to my data after the AI has done its thing, right? And that's where taking that different approach says, no, we're just going to build it in as a foundational layer. We're going to help drive change across the business, and we're going to connect effectively with an ecosystem, right? To really open up our architecture, make it possible not only for third parties to build agents that can work inside our platform, but also so that they can actually then connect with that broader ecosystem and deliver real value. Now, I got to say, some clients right out there doing it, want to do more. Other clients, yeah, they're figuring out the basics.
So what type of work did it take to get your platform ready for MCP connectivity and agentic AI connectivity into you, right?
Yeah.
Because again, it's not just one-way traffic, it's two-way traffic, right? If there's stuff that you want to have done. Sorry, so what did that take? And then what type of usage are you seeing? What's the uptake there?
Well, first of all, I'd say it took a lot.
Yeah.
So we've been working with AI for more than 5 years now, right? About 7 or 8 years. We've really been working hard on AI. And it really, and MCP, if you go back 18 months ago, no one was talking about MCP.
It didn't exist.
It's that new. Exactly. No one, we were having this discussion 18 months ago, and we go, what? Huh? Whereas, yeah, it's come out now. And even then, Claude is far more advanced than the others in terms of being able to connect in and get value with an MCP protocol. So
for sure,
I think there's a lot to do to get that working better. It's taken us, all of that 18 months really to get it to the point where it actually works effectively. And what clients are seeing is basically they turn on Claude, they turn on our Virtuoso platform, connect the two, and Claude goes, wow, I've got all this data. What do you want me to do?
Right.
Oh, I'd like a scenario model for the next 10 years for this property where I can just move sliders and make assumptions about net rent and occupancy and other things and tell me what that means for the future revenue and return for the property. And that used to take, we have a module that does that.
Yep.
But doing that now on, in minutes is really interesting. It's not the same depth, but it's
but at least it gives you a ballpark figure around which you can then start making decisions. How do you make decisions about whether you want to use an open source model where the cost could potentially be like 1/10 the price of using, OpenAI or using Anthropic, and then using either one of those companies' models? Where do you think this shift is? Where do you think this landscape is going to look like as you go forward, open source versus the bigger model companies?
I'd go beyond that. And
go
say,
ahead.
I think the big question for me is LLMs, right? LLMs where it's at. And my view would be LLMs are a stepping stone to something we don't know about yet. There are some emerging.
Have you been watching this show? Because I feel like you're just repeating stuff that I've said, but go ahead.
I read widely, listen widely.
Like it's nothing to do with you, Michael. I figured this out on my own.
I've certainly been watching some of your shows.
Goes. I'm kidding.
No, look, I think we've just with Glass in Chip. You saw the deal with Corning with Nvidia a month or two ago. I know you did. Which is really like an iPhone moment for the digital camera.
Yeah.
Right. So my expectation is the same thing will happen on the software side. And we will see a transformational shift at some point where LLMs will be, that was the left brain or the right brain, whichever one it is. And here's the other half that really, because what we're talking about, LLMs are constrained within a model of the known and facts and all that sort of stuff. They can imagine stuff, but not really. It's in a context, as opposed to saying, I just want to understand everything, what the human mind can do, right? And that's a very different model.
Right. I mean, I think we're very, and I'm on record as saying this as well, but I think we're very, very far away from replicating what the human mind can do, because I do think that people wildly underestimate, like, they just look at the normal humans they know, and they're like, well, it's got to be smarter than Bob because Bob's an idiot. You know what I mean? But the brain itself is so insanely powerful and can do things today that a computer could never conceive of doing, at least not yet.
Yeah. It's exactly the same as it's exactly the same as Excel. 99% of the people on the planet who use Excel use 5% of its capability.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's the same with the human brain. 99% of the people on the planet, we can see they only use 5% of its capability.
I would say less than 5, but fair enough. But fair enough. And I spend a lot of time also thinking about like what's going to happen in the chip industry, right? What NVIDIA is building right now on the GPU side, and new companies like Cerebras, what they're building as well. I'm sure you follow all of this stuff. But Martin and I talk about this on our other show on AGTP all the time. Like we feel like we're really early innings on this in this game, and that you're right that like an LLM today is going to look quaint in 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah, we're 5% up the hockey stick curve. It's going to take off at some point.
Yeah, and it's weird. I don't even think the Gartner hype cycle is relevant here because there's so many like little ups and downs. Do you know what I mean? Like the Gartner hype cycle should be kind of like this.
Yeah.
But in this case, I think there's a lot of ups and downs here going on, and maybe there are multiple Gartner hype cycles when it comes to artificial intelligence for people that understand what that means. Do you think I'm wrong there? Or?
No, I think that's absolutely right, because I think what you're seeing is people hear the hype and then they go and try and do it and they go, oh, that's much harder than I thought it would be. I thought I could just do that. But no, I've got to do these 10 other things to make that work. And it's really hard. And that's what we've been through in terms of building enterprise-grade tools that can actually make a difference, that you can reliably deploy across 800 users and say, it'll work.
So one more thing before I let you go. Do you see companies saying we're not just going to, because you mentioned before, like process is really important. I don't disagree with you. As a matter of fact, the thing that made me really effective at work was understanding how to make a process better and then how to use technology to attack that process, break it down into its small pieces, and then build it back up in a way that made it way more effective and efficient. Yep. Are you seeing workflow changes as well? Not just sort of the digitalization of the same flow, but massive workflow changes where it's like, now we can do this in a way that's different because we have this new technology.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a good example would be fund admin, private equity fund admin in real estate, where you end up with hundreds of accountants clicking buttons all day long, processing stuff that requires 20 or 30 years of experience.
Yeah.
And a lot of that can actually be done by AI. But the problem then is that the people who would do that today, there's no juniors coming through to replace them.
Right.
And therefore, who's going to tell the AI what to do in 10 years' time? Because, or know that the AI is right. They'll get to the point where people will just trust the AI, and that's terrible. Look at some of the stuff we demo today. I show a Claude artifact to a client, and basically the Claude artifact writes the property manager's commentary on the monthly performance of the property. And I've always come from a background that says the one way the property manager knows what he's doing is that he's actually written that commentary on the financials.
Yeah.
Now, if the AI is writing the commentary on the financials, sure, means that now the property manager's got more time to go and talk to clients. Fantastic. But does that person still understand what they're going on?
Yeah, I was explaining to somebody, I think it was this morning or yesterday morning, I can't remember when, that like when we started introducing automated trading onto the trading desk on the portfolio trading desk at Goldman Sachs, I was kind of adamant about the fact that I wanted to understand like the deeper inner workings of how the algorithms worked, because I wanted to make sure, one, that I could disintermediate it if I thought something was going wrong.
Yep.
Two, that I could explain to a client, like, why did the algo do that, as opposed to just going, I don't know, it's just what the code said, which is a bad answer to any client. And three, if the algo died, I needed to be able to trade on my own in the same way. Exactly. And if I don't understand what it's doing, like, then what am I doing, right? And then also four, the last thing is I have to be able to teach somebody how to use it. And if I don't understand how it works, it's just like a black box talking to a black box. It's meaningless. Yeah.
It's like saying, oh, why are we doing this? Oh, because my boss told me we had to.
Right. Which is not the right way to do any of this kind of stuff.
Oh, your boss is an AI now. It tells you what to do and you just accept it blindly. That's terrible.
Exactly.
But on a positive note, I'd say, I think it is saving a lot of people a lot of time. It is, and our focus in that is really two things. As I said, internally, let's give better value to our clients, and externally, let's help our clients, give better value to their investors and their customers.
Perfect. Okay, Bernie, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for spending so much time with us today. I really appreciate it.
Enjoyed it. Thank you, Michael. It's been a pleasure.
It was great to meet you.
Likewise.
Okay, let's spend a few minutes before we welcome our next guest to talk about China's Z.AI is creating like a DeepSeek moment. And what does that mean? Well, it means that that Z.AI is literally, in a way, not literally, but in a way, like coming out of nowhere, building something really great. Their GLM 5.2 model is now being treated as like a usable, high-performing, open-weight model that is close enough to leading U.S. systems to change developer behavior. This is actually super interesting, right? The model was launched in mid-June by Beijing-based Z.AI, also known as Zhipu AI. I kind of like the Zhipu thing better, but that's just me. It's getting attention for coding, agentic workflows, long context tasks, and price, meaning it's much cheaper to use than some of the foundational models that we see out of Anthropic and out of OpenAI. Reuters reported that GLM 5.2 is now being discussed in Silicon Valley as kind of a mini DeepSeek moment because it narrows the perceived gap between Chinese open weight models and the closed models from OpenAI and Anthropic. And you saw, I just had this conversation with Bernie from Yardi Systems, and one of the things we brought up was, how do you feel about the open source models and the open weight models? He went a little bit further, but this is a conversation I do like having with the people that are actually out there using the LLMs. And to be fair, a lot of people answer in the same way that Bernie did, and that is, I don't know, these large language models are great, but it's early. But let's just dig a little bit deeper into this before we get to that part of this conversation. The underlying stuff with Z.AI is that from a developer standpoint, they really care about like whether a model works, what it costs, and whether they can deploy it reliably, right? And whether it lets them avoid being locked into a single proprietary provider. I mean, look, this is what Amazon is doing, or AWS is doing, I should say, with Bedrock. It's saying, here's every model we know that exists and to which we can have access and to which we can give you access. You decide which one you want to use based on your budget, based on your knowledge, based on your trust of like which one of these models is going to be best for you. And to be fair, GLM 5.2 from Z.AI is performing well enough in these cases and on those sort of parameters that some companies and technical teams are willing to test it seriously. This is a big change too, right? Because if you remember, when DeepSeek came out, this is why we call it kind of like a mini DeepSeek moment, because when DeepSeek came out, it was kind of a shock to the overall artificial intelligence system. Nobody expected this to happen. And once it was released out there, it was still further behind than some of, like I said, some of the foundational models that we had out there for ChatGPT and Claude and Opus. But it wasn't so far behind that you couldn't envision it actually catching up. And the money that got spent to build it wasn't in the hundreds of billions of dollars. It was in the millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars. Now, we know recently that DeepSeek actually raised $7 billion at a $50 billion valuation, but they didn't raise $122 billion at an almost $1 trillion valuation. So like the scope and the size are completely different here. Open Router describes GLM 5.2 as a large-scale reasoning model with 1 million token context window. So that's also very important as well. Long context actually ends up being really important. Just imagine talking to your friend on Monday about going to a movie on Tuesday and then talking to them on Tuesday and they're like, what movie are you talking about? Like, did we actually have this discussion? So long context does matter. And that million token context window is built for long horizon agent workflows, product level software engineering, and complex multi-step automation, which frankly is the place where most companies that are deftly deploying artificial intelligence are doing most of their work and frankly doing most of their best work, right? Because if you don't have enough long context, you're not going to be able to accomplish like most of the things that you actually want to get done. So that actually ends up being pretty important. Independent benchmarks separate from all of this stuff actually support this attention. Artificial analysis says that GLM 5.2 is the leading open weight model on its own intelligence index, scoring ahead of Minimax M3, DeepSeek version 4 Pro, and Kimi 2.6. It also says that GLM 5.2 is competitive with proprietary models on its agent benchmark while sitting on the cost performance frontier. I mean, this is where things on the cost side just get super interesting, right? And the cost part of this conversation may be the most important part of the conversation. Again, just getting back to some analysis. Artificial analysis lists first-party pricing at $1.40 per million input tokens and $4.40 per million output tokens, while Reuters says the models operate at roughly one-sixth the cost of leading closed US frontier models. Agentic AI can consume a ton of tokens, and everybody knows this, right? And the more companies use AI for real work, the more pricing becomes infrastructure strategy rather than a line item detail. And if you think about this, we're going to bang on this for as long as we possibly can. If I told you any other piece of technology or any other tool that you use is like 95% as good as the most expensive tool, and it costs you 1/6 or 1/7, or in some cases 1/10 the price, as long as the switching costs weren't high, and as long as you had confidence in the fact that that model was going to be around, right? I mean, I always say the best ability is availability. And we've seen examples. This is why we have to worry about this, right? Because we've seen examples where the US government has come in and said, and this is particularly true for companies outside the United States or implementations outside the United States, right? Well, you can't use Fable 5 Fable 5. I always want to say Fab 5. I don't know why. But you can't use Fable 5 anymore, and you can't use Claude 5.0 or Opus 5.0. Mythos, excuse me. So why is this so important? Well, it's because if you can't use it and you build workflows around it, it's just going to be hard for you to run your company or run your division or even run your little trading desk. It's just going to be super hard. So as long as this model remains available, right, that's important. And this is where I say, like, the main constraint here for any of these models is not just its availability, but trust, right? So Western companies in reverse that are using some of these Chinese open source models, particularly in regulated industries, may or may not be willing to put these Chinese models inside of like critical workflows, even when the models are cheaper and technically strong. There have been reporting that notes that the adoption by larger enterprises is slowed by data security concerns, procurement reviews, and the complexity of replacing or routing around existing AI systems. And the question you have to ask yourself here is, like, who do you trust? And can you trust a company like Z.AI? And then you have to ask yourself, why not? Like, why not? What is the upside for them? And again, I don't want to talk about geopolitics because this show's not about politics at any level. And to be fair, I'm not so interested in having that discussion. But if you can trust it and the cost benefit to you makes sense, I mean, I have this feeling, again, if you just go look at what AWS is offering through their Bedrock platform, they're offering every open source model that they possibly can. And part of the reason why is because their customers are asking for it. And we think about this a lot, but like, where's the value going to fall in the value chain? Where's the money going to fall in the value chain? Is it going to fall to these foundational models that are very expensive to maintain, very expensive to train, and very expensive from which to get inference? Or are they going to use these open source models, which again are readily available, and have to, if they're sitting on AWS's systems, have to be compliant with all of their security modules? And probably the same thing for Microsoft, because Microsoft announced a couple of days ago that they were also going to get into this business of giving people access to other models. They were complaining about their own lock-in for Copilot into all their other systems. If somebody wants to use their systems but wants to use it with an open source model, they're going to allow them to do this because it simply makes sense to do this. It just makes sense, right? Because where are you going to make all your money? If you believe that the open source model is going to be the winner across the board, then you're not going to make any money from your closed source model, from your closed weight model. But where are you going to make money if you're a company like Microsoft, or frankly, from a company like AWS, or even Google? And you saw Facebook trying to get into this business too, although they don't have enough compute to sell compute, and they don't have enough data center capacity or excess data center capacity to sell that capacity either. But the real question is that if the open source models win, that companies, and I believe that they will, and I'm on record as saying that, and that means that Z.AI has a chance to be one of those winners, not the only one, but one of them for sure. Then the big companies where the money's going to fall in the value chain are the companies that can provide services around those open source models, first of all. And second of all, those that provide the cloud and data management infrastructure, which again is a place where Google, Microsoft, AWS excels. And I think at the end of the day, that's where stuff is going to get really important. And I think that what this proves is that DeepSeek itself was not like a one-off moment. It was a precursor, in my mind, to what's happening in the open source and open weight model market overall. And I don't think that's going to change much. So Rand found that Chinese large language models' global market share rose from 3% to 13%. So more than 4 times in 2 months after DeepSeek's R1 launch, which was again 2 years ago. And while the US lead remains high and large, I believe that the open source models, whether they come from China or frankly anywhere else in the world, are going to be harder and harder to dismiss. Martin, let's bring in Jeremy Ma, the founder and CEO at NeuXP Group. Jeremy, how are you? Awesome. Okay, let's bring him into the main room. Jeremy, it's great to have you on the show. We want to have you on because we wanted to talk about how AI-powered fintech ecosystems will help businesses operate more efficiently, serve customers more intelligently, and scale across borders. And before we get to that in detail, tell us a little bit more about, am I pronouncing this right? NeuXP Group.
Yes, correct.
Go for it.
Yeah. Okay. So, Michael, thanks for having me today. So,
Thank you.
just to share a bit about what we do. So, basically, the company, we have three pillars. So, of course, the first one is in the area of digital transformation. So, whereby we assist, companies, particularly those still within the traditional setup, to digitize and to keep themselves relevant in today's environment. And of course, the second part would be the cross-border market access. So that would be the next step. So once you digitize, then of course the next thing is to expand your market. So then that is where through our ecosystem and through the presence in different jurisdictions, that is how we basically support the entrepreneurs and the companies. And of course, the third part of it will be more on the project side of it. So whereby sometimes initiating new projects, or even sometimes within the company itself, there are certain areas or certain niche market that they are looking to explore, but they do not know how. And that is where we have the turnkey solution as well to assist the entrepreneurs to basically ease their journey. So not just in the domestic market, but also of course the international markets as well. Yep. So in a nutshell, that is what we do.
Got it. Can I ask you this? How did a company that seems to me, right, because AI didn't exist, at least not in the way that it exists today, let's say like 5 to 6 years ago, right? How does a company that's built around digital transformation and cross-border expansion build expertise fast enough to be able to understand where artificial intelligence fits into the value chain for the companies that you're already helping going through digital transformation? And more than that, for the new companies that you're going to help go through digital transformation, where digital transformation and AI cannot be separated?
Yeah, so basically it's a good question. So because, when we talk about AI, not just, it's dated back, more than, we go more than the 5 or 7 years. We've been hearing this, like maybe for the past 10, 15 years and all that. So, but the thing is, there's a lot of hype around it. And a lot of, entrepreneurs or businessmen, they do not know, okay, that is probably the latest in thing, and I want to get into it, without further understanding. So
Right.
of course, traditionally, what we look at, at AI is, people always associate it with, oh, I can use AI to do my tasks faster. I can, increase my productivity and becoming more efficient. So, but of course, that was back then. But things have been evolving, pretty fast, and now we are no longer looking at traditional AI, but more towards the agentic AI, which is a step further. So, and that is where a lot of misconception, because agentic AI, we are looking at not just looking at one particular use case, but rather how we can adopt AI into both planning, reasoning, and then also executing the workflow and coordinating across all the systems within the organization. With limited human intervention. So it's not just okay, I just implement the AI into my manufacturing process, but it actually goes more than that.
How is AI or agentic AI going to reshape the way businesses operate from your perspective, particularly when it comes to digital transformation? And what do companies have to do to get ready for it, or again, to just get enough expertise to be able to handle it once you come in, help them digitally transform, help them deploy it, and then leave? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so I think the most important part here is the mindset. So most of the time, I mean, these businesses, they see AI, as a software or as a tool. But then they have to understand that it is more than that. Like basically, you're using its implementation to scale your digital workforce layer. So what it means simply is that within say sometimes we may see that the next 3 to 5 years, but nowadays things change so fast that we are looking within the next 3 to 6 months new technologies are being deployed. So that is where we can see like on the high level, I mean like this entrepreneurs or even senior management in the larger organizations, to see how these AI agents can be deployed, not just in one particular area, but across the different segments like the sales, operations, finance, customer service, and all that. So, and how they can do that is, of course, some bigger organization, yes, they do engage external consultants and all that, but it all actually begins within your organization itself. To basically put together all the respective stakeholders, and to see how technology here is not here to replace them, but rather to complement them.
How are fintechs and financial services businesses different than other businesses in their necessity to deploy agentic AI?
Yeah. So what I would say that, I mean, if you talk about the implementation flow, is not very much different across the industry. So the only differences here would be, of course, the products or services that you are basically offering. I mean, like to your end customer. So because at the end, say for example, I give a use case when we talk about sales process. So the sales process in AI is pretty much the same across, just that depending on who are your end customers, whether your end customers are the retail, or whether they are, or whether it's more B2B centric and all that. So but in terms of the structure or the implementation, it would be more pretty much similar. That is why I would say that there are, of course, some minor customization or tweaking that is required, but that is the important point that is often overlooked, whereby businesses, they think that, oh, I need to recreate the entire engine and all that. So, and by recreating, of course, first it takes a lot of time, and then second thing, it's not really a proven model, and you need to basically train the models, feed a lot of information, and a lot of try and errors. So, and that is why for us, what we usually do is that as an enabler, we look at proven solutions or systems that has already existed, outside, I mean, that has already successfully been implemented in different markets, and how we can basically take that, solution to the let's say the local use cases.
And how ready are some of these companies to actually change the workflows that they have?
Okay, I would say, if you ask me personally speaking, so I mean we have different categories of companies. So of course there are companies that are basically totally new, no idea, not sure where to start and all that. So of course, but if you look at their presentation, yes, it may seem to be, but when you drill a few levels deeper, if you look at whether their workforce are ready for such kind of technology, so they are not. So that is one group that we see, and these are the group that they need a lot of guidance and a lot of I mean, they need to be educated in the way how this basically benefits them. And we have also another category where companies, they foresee I mean, AI as part of their entire workflow, and they've seen it many years. So that's why they have already tried several things and all that. So, but the challenge here is basically sometimes it may be due to the size or or how long the company has been established, because, and also the other main issue we see here is the use of legacy systems. So, and that is why sometimes that may pose, integration challenges, and of course, ultimately, it is the part on the decision making, whether or not the decision maker here would be, willing to call the shots, to say, okay, let's go for it, because we see that sometimes, some organizations, they prefer to play safe, because or even trying to be in the status quo, because sometimes they do not want to bear, let's say if there is something that turn up, or if let's say the instability in the system, or maybe the results that comes out not as per intended, so who is going to take that responsibility? So these are, I mean, some of the common observations that we see in the market now.
But how do you balance this idea, or how do you help some of your clients balance this idea of, we want to make sure we're not going to blow up our business, so we're going to play it safe, with the concept that the artificial intelligence market or the technology market at scale is just moving so fast anyway, and that if they don't get their minds around, we need to do this digital transformation in a way that we hadn't considered before, that they could potentially get left behind, whether that's in banking, fintech, or any other sector.
Yeah, so this is, I mean, this has been a problem that we foresee, during the early days of our company. So whereby, people are very reluctant to make that first step, not just on the cost perspective, but also, in terms of the operational risk that is involved. So how we basically address that concern is that we will sit together, with these organizations and identify, let's say if there is a specific use case, or even, there is a new segment that, or for example, say if they are looking to sell their products to a new segment of customer, or opening up, a new market, and that particular use case or project will be often used as a pilot run for the implementation. So and once they have actually seen the results from that, then the technology is basically adopted slowly across the other divisions. So that is why, I mean, we basically take a step-by-step approach rather than a total top-down total revamp and stuff like that.
So run me through this again. What has to happen, maybe in more general terms, so that companies that don't know what the next step is, or maybe afraid of taking the next step, what has to happen to get them comfortable? Is it this idea that they need to try a small implementation and then see it work first, and then they can build it out more at scale across the board? Is there a mindset problem inside of some of these companies where like, we don't need this, we got enough, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
what has to change?
Yeah, of course, the mindset is always the biggest stumbling block that we see. So, but of course, I mean, I would say 90% of the time, it always comes with a specific problem statement. For example, that is the maximum productivity that I'm getting. So if or even my cost has been running up. So how do I balance productivity and also cost in order to be competitive? So there is always a specific issue that these companies would come, and then we will look at what would be the appropriate solution to address them, and that would be used as the use case pilot basically. So I mean, of course, if we want to convince, I mean, just because of the mindset and all that, based on my experience, sometimes you've been talking the same old thing for the past, I don't know, many years, and nothing happened. So there are, I mean, several cases. So sometimes I would just go back and ask, I mean, this company. So since the last we met or we spoke, a couple of years ago, so what has changed, or what or did you implement anything? I mean, anything that that we have been exploring since our last discussion. So you find that nothing. It was just a status quo, and they just prefer to wait. I mean, wait and see that kind of approach.
So what are you actually seeing in terms of AI adoption? Where are you actually seeing it adopted? Where are you seeing it actually have impact? Like, run me through this. You know what I mean? Because you can see like small adoption of this? Like, what are you actually seeing out there as you go through and you talk to clients, you serve clients, you want to serve clients? What are you seeing?
Yep. So I would say that adoption is already happening, just that it's just happening quietly. So because sometimes businesses, they are already using AI, but they may not even be aware, or sometimes they don't even call it agentic AI. So I mean, just some example, like say now we see in the trend that there are a lot of AI assisted customer engagement.
Right.
Even like we used to have last time we used to have the chatbots, but now it even expanded through the WhatsApp messages, and even emails outreach. So these are basically some small implementation that we saw, and of course things like automated proposal generation. From after the initial engagement, then we proceed with the proposal, and then as part of the sales process. So, and of course on the fintech side, we are seeing more cases like investment screening, financial, in the area of financial analysis, and stuff like that. So but I would say that it's not implemented on a very wide scale yet, but just on small areas of it. And the other thing, the other observation is that there are a lot of areas to improve. Okay, so why I would say areas to improve? Because it is very important, for these companies. Especially financial firms, they need to know that AI here is not, it's not being implemented to replace your traditional sales guys, because people, let's say if you so if you talk about say, okay, this what is your risk profiling, so what sort of funds that may be suitable, that but the yes, they are all very information based, but it lacks the human touch, whereby that is the part that is required, in order to close that particular sale.
Right.
So and that is also the other observation that we saw. If we look at the numbers, in terms of the sales numbers, or even the asset under management, compared to a full digital company, and those that are using a hybrid approach. But of course the hybrid approach will typically do better compared to the traditional one, is because of the skill. They can, you now, last time you can reach out, I'd say, for example, 10-20 customers a day, but today with this solution you can go like 200 customers a day, and you will know, okay, from that on, how many of this actually are warm leads, and so on.
How knowledgeable do you think the customers are about artificial intelligence? And I'll give you an example. If you were going through digital transformation, or I'll make a comparison actually. If you were going through digital transformation with, let's say, client A, and you talk to them about cloud, like on-prem versus on-prem, it's pretty easy to understand. Okay, so we own the compute, or we don't own it, or we own the data center, we don't own it. Like, this makes sense. There's some security issues you have to consider, a few other things too. But it all makes sense. It's easy to understand to them. How knowledgeable do you think they are now that you're going through this next level of digital transformation, where you're like, and then there's agentic AI and MCP, right? So the model context protocol, and then you have to have API connectivity. Like, I feel like there's so much jargon going on that maybe their head starts spinning. Like, is the knowledge out there yet, or is that part of the issue here that has to be resolved?
Yeah, so I would say that you brought up a very great point, because I would say 99%, or even 99% of the time, right, we don't use all these jargons, because if you're looking at the SME market, where the entrepreneur or the founder, they are basically wearing several hats. They are definitely not wouldn't be as exposed if this is the first time that they are implementing it. So but some may do a lot of research and all that, but they could they can't really relate it, especially if you're not from the IT background. So most of the time we always put it in layman terms, and also to make it easy to understand. So it's not just in Asia, but also even in Europe itself, because where we have presence there. So we also noticed that there is also a lot of trend whereby, yes, they are. I mean, these entrepreneurs, they want to do something, or they know that this kind of tools would be useful. But the thing is that because of all the jargons, they're just taking a step back. So that is why, like in our business model, we usually provide the turnkey solution, because to remove the headache, because the last that you want is that something that you're not familiar, and then you don't even know, okay, aside to the cloud provider, who else I need to do, who should I engage, for the migration. And if let's say anything happens, if my server is in the data center, who is going to do that? So
Exactly.
so that's why there are too many components, and sometimes without having the right knowledge, at the end of the day, things that's supposed to help you, but at the end it becomes, it makes it become very expensive. And that is why some when entrepreneurs who don't really see the benefit, they will eventually think, is it worth spending all this money? But I don't really see results, because at the end of the day, all this technology should be there, to assist, to ease, and also of course to increase efficiency. So but when you see it on the perspective as a cost center, right, then
Yep.
then that would be, of course, the major stumbling block already. I mean, like, in order to see, just to make the first move, and also when and also to keep yourself updated with the latest technologies.
Got it. Okay. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming in and doing this today. I really appreciate you spending so much time with us. That was really great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, Martin, let's bring in Lars. Lars, how are you? You'll be able to, you can't hear me yet. I like what your hands do, though. That's good. Okay, so you're probably in the main room now. It's nice to see you. I don't think I've ever seen you without your hair orange, but that's like a story for another day. I bet you didn't think I was going to remember that.
Yeah, that's a while ago.
It's a while ago, but good to see you. Anyway, look, we wanted to have you on because we wanted to talk about how production-grade AI, governance, security, and agentic systems can help companies turn AI into measurable operational leverage. But maybe just for people that may not know you, give us a little bit of history, if you don't mind, into Gradion. You know what I mean? Like the beginning of Lars, the middle of Lars, and then into Gradion, just so people can have some idea.
Oh, okay. Well,
thank you.
I could talk for hours there. Let me make it brief. So I'm a serial founder. I co-founded 3 companies, exited 2 successfully. My last big exit was a flight search engine in Germany, which I sold to Kayak, the market leader, world market leader, and went to the US. I also co-founded NFQ 20. Oh my God.
Is it 20 years ago?
More, 22 or 23 years ago.
I've got a kid that's 24 years old. What are we doing?
Yeah, well, I'm just old, Michael. You're old.
Go for it.
So better not talk about that.
No, let's not do that.
So, and what we have been doing back in the days was just software development. I went to Asia 12 years ago, founded Gradion, which is tech consultants and software development, which is super exciting area to be in, especially now in the time of AI. And since the last 12 years, we've been helping companies in Europe, but mainly in Asia, accelerate and scale their business. It's as simple as that.
So talk to me about how, God, I don't know where to start, but like, let's start with the release of DeepSeek, just as an anchoring time, right? What was it, the beginning of 2025, if I have that correctly, or maybe 2024, I can't remember anymore, time's a flat surface. How did that change the way you as a business leader, but your teams as well, have started looking at like where artificial intelligence and large language models fit into this whole development business that you're building, and where it helps your clients that become, bigger, faster, stronger?
Oh, okay. So a couple of years ago, when this whole AI thing started, everybody was like, "Oh my God, we need our own AI, we need our own LLM." And so on, governance, GDPR, data. And a lot of companies invested a lot of money because building your own LLM is expensive.
Very.
So we talk about $500,000, $1 million projects or more. And most of these projects didn't work very well. I mean, think about, who was it? McKinsey's AI, which just a couple of months got hacked and so on, which is really embarrassing. And the bigger problem there is if you build your own AI, it will be never as good as the frontier models. So what that means that the users in your company, they don't really like your AI. They want to use GPT or Claude or DeepSeek or whatever it is, yeah. So so you fight an uphill battle. And couple of, I would say a year ago, when this whole agentic thing came up, it shifted towards. So the agentic word is quite complex, but or can be used in so many things. But let me try to make it very simple. So we have a division which is called AI operations. And what we try to do is we go in a company and we identify where are they hurt, where are they bleeding money. It's either they spend too much money, or they could save money, or they could make more money. And then we tackle this business process with AI. And there we talk about investments like 5 figures US dollars, not 6 figures. Okay. So it's pretty straightforward, and you immediately have a positive business effect. And what happens is that the companies, they would say, oh, cool, these guys helped me. I invested this, but I made back more money. I want more. Let's dig deeper in our company. And that's the big difference. So there's no requirement of hundreds of thousands of dollars of investments. Even with a smaller budget, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, you can get tangible results in your company, which help you to save more money than it costs or make more money.
In the companies that you're dealing with, right? Just on average, because I know it's going to be different for every company, it's different for every vertical as well. Where is the desire, the request coming from that says, we read about artificial intelligence out in the market, we know this thing is happening, we see some of our competitors are maybe doing it. Is it coming from the C-suite? Is it coming from the line operator? Like, where is it coming from? And then with whom do you have to deal to actually get this thing to happen? Again, is there pressure from the C-suite? Is there pressure from the board? Where's all this stuff originating? Then who has to approve it to actually get it done?
So we typically work with SMEs, which are often still founder-led. And that makes it a little bit easier. The pressure is economical. It's quite simple. Worldwide, the pressure on prices, taxes, tariffs, and so on, make the life difficult. So people need to earn more money or save more costs, as simple as that. And this is actually the reason for doing that. And it has to come from the top, because the people involved, there's a lot of fear. You know,
is there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, think about it. If you are an office worker in a specific department, and you're suddenly confronted with AI, the first thought you have is, this AI is going to replace me. So why would they support this project, which makes them lose their job if it works?
But then how do you explain this to people? Because I literally worked, when I was at Goldman Sachs, right? I was in a job that was completely getting automated. I actually helped automate it. But I was never afraid that automation, at least in the short to medium term, was going to force me to lose my job, because it just meant that I could do way more work and be way more effective and way more productive and deal with way more clients. So it was hard to get rid of me. And frankly, even after I left, the guys and gals that I left behind, they were still there. Some of them are still there doing the same work. They're just doing 10 times more of it, because the AI makes them more efficient. How do you get that message across to people that actually, if you master this thing, you may not lose your job. You may be more busy than you've ever been.
Oh, absolutely. That answer is twofold. Let me be quite frank here. The honest answer is that is true for some people.
Yep.
So what the AI changed is that what you need is business thinking. You need to understand what you're doing. You need critical thinking. You need to use your brain to think, is what I'm doing here the right thing for getting my goals? You need to have really good communication skills, talk to your peers, communicate in the company. And if you have these skills, the augmentation of AI will absolutely supercharge you, like 10x, 20x, no problem at all. Easily. Exactly. Yep. Exactly. The downside is, the truth be told, is and that is now a strong statement I'm making, but out of my experience, the majority, let's say 60% of the people, do not have these skills. They like to do their job, which they did for the last 20, 30 years. They like being told what they have been to do, and they just do a good job. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. However, so I had clients literally telling me, they said to me, hey, Lars, your team is really good. There's nothing wrong with your engineers. We're really happy with them. But honestly, if I need to tell your engineers what they need to do, I can tell it Claude, and I pay much less, so I don't need your people. I got that argument. And that argument is also true for back office or other areas. It's exactly the same.
It is, but that means you have to know, so you can get an answer, but then can you affect that answer? Do you know what I mean? Can you deploy that answer? So I get the point that they're making. It's like, why am I asking you when I could just add Claude, and Claude's going to give me maybe an even better answer? But then the real question is, okay, tough guy, how are you going to implement it? Because that's what, we're not just here giving answers. We're actually here building solutions, which is different than giving answers. Is that fair?
Absolutely fair enough. But I mean, this is the difference. I mean, if you talk about the old GPT style interfaces where you are like, I ask a question and I get an answer, you're right. That doesn't help. But the agentic systems, if they're embedded in your ecosystem and have access to your CRM, to your ERP, to your data warehouse, whatever, they get shit done. So they're like, no, okay, let me sort it out. Let me search through the stuff, and I'm going to find it, and I will give you what you need, be it a tool, be it complex answers, be it complex reports. You get all these things within minutes, which otherwise would have taken days.
Yeah, but are you convinced that some of these SMEs with whom you're dealing actually have the understanding of the complexity of building agentic systems into their existing systems, in the sense that, do they even understand how to create API connectivity with external systems? Do they understand the model context protocol? And on top of that, and I think this is where things get really tricky, when they increase the surfaces with whom they're dealing externally as third parties, just the pure risk that they take on from a cybersecurity standpoint. I know that's like down a different rabbit hole, but like the operational complexity around building agentic AI connectivity, not just internally, but to external third-party systems, means now you're increasing the surface where cyber becomes a problem. Is there an understanding of this as well, or no?
No, absolutely not. I mean, but that's why there are companies like us who can solve that for them.
But that's my point, though, right? In other words, inside the company, they can say, well, we can just ask somebody, we don't need you guys to do this. But the reality is that, like, once things start getting operationally complex, and that's all the time, once they start trying to do this stuff on their own, don't they get lost?
No, I don't think so. Let me make this a little bit more practical, because it's very abstract. So recently I have been dealing with a company who is manufacturing electronic components. So if you thought like complex electronic components, if you think about complex electronic components, they consist of a lot of individual parts, chips, transistors, whatever. So, and what this company does is they buy these stuff, they source them from China, from everywhere, and then they combine them, make it in a workable product, and deliver the product. So if a client or potential client asks them for a quote, they say, like, let's say I want this, what they have a team of 30 people who reach out to their partners, to the companies they work with in China, in Asia, and Vietnam, and manually get quotes for all the different parts. And then actually, once they have all the data, they manually create a quote and go back to sales and say, like, this is the price we can offer to the client.
Right.
This process takes weeks, not days, weeks, yeah, to be clear. And this is something which can be easily worked with AI, because agentic AI can absolutely, once you deliver the communication channel, you can like automatically send an email, give me the quote, get back, build it in, and so on. So you bring it down from weeks to days. So sales is much better. Yeah. So that's one thing. And then the next step, and that gets even more interesting. If you're in the manufacturing industry, you have a lot of governance there. So they need to have the proper certificates for each individual piece they're using. Is it done properly? Where it's sourced for? No child labor use, yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of, because this particular company is in the European Union, there are a lot of regulations around it.
Yeah.
This is a huge amount of work which you need to update, again, which you perfectly can automate. And that is something. So sorry.
Go ahead.
So in this particular case, 30 people, let's say they invest 100, 200K to build that system, yeah?
Yep.
And out of the 30 people, they can let go 20. They keep the 10 smart ones. They keep the 10 who have business mindset, who have critical thinking. They need them and save salaries. So after, even in the first year, they will get their investment back. So this is how this works. That's what this is about.
It's not just a cost thing, though, is it?
Well, it's costs, and then it's quicker on the market. They can they can be better in the sales, or they can sell better. So it's also earnings and so on. So
what about governance? You mentioned this kind of in passing at the beginning of this conversation. You're like, they need to think about their governance. Where does this fit into the implementation and the deployment timeline? Like, where do they have to think about it? And do you guys help them do that, or is this something your clients have to develop on their own?
It's funny that you ask. So I have a LinkedIn posting schedule for next week. So we're launching our first product by the end of the year, which is the very first AI sovereign platform targeted in the first step for Europe, because sovereign is a big topic there. And we start with the CRM. Yeah. So because people understand, when Anthropic pulled Fable, because Trump said no, that was a big wake up moment for Europeans. They were like, fuck, what happens if Trump decides tomorrow Microsoft can't be used in Europe? Then our systems stop. Yeah. So retaining and maintaining control over your data is a big topic.
Yeah.
Now, so this is why we decided we tackle this. And honestly, also, I was super annoyed. We use HubSpot since many years. It's a horrible product. I pay a huge amount of money for a very old, outdated product where AI is somehow plugged in, and Salesforce is similarly, it's plugged in. So this can be done AI native a lot better. So this is what we're doing. So, and there, because the whole topic of governance, GDPR, AI Act, and so on is built in. So we build it into the product. So for sure you can do governance in individual processes, and you can start there. But if you want to do it properly, you really need to rethink how you deal with data in your whole company, how you handle your data, how you lock, how you have access, and so on and so on. And that's a quite big topic.
Can you talk to me as well, before I let you go, about the potential progression from frontier models to open source models and open weight models? Like, what are you seeing here? What are the conversations there that you're seeing or you're hearing? And what's your view on this?
Oh, that's a very good question. So,
yeah.
So I'm working, it's very funny. So I'm sitting here, you don't see my desk, but I have like 4 Claude sessions open. And since 4 days, I'm massively churning out reports, specifications, code using Fable. Now, because Fable is still included in the subscription until tomorrow. After tomorrow, Fable will be available only on a pay-per-use.
Really?
Yes.
We believe. Can I ask you this though? Do we believe that that's actually going to happen? Because they said the same thing about their other models, and then they were like, you know what? Never mind. We're not going to charge you for it. We're just going to keep the subscription. We're going to try to figure it out. But you're telling me that Fable tomorrow goes.
No, that's what they
user-based.
announced. Let's see. And
I know.
Yep. And I mean, so I just calculated. So I was like, so I have a $200 subscription for the month, and the work for last year would have cost me $2,500
A month, yeah.
No, just the last 3 days.
Oh, last
Only
3
the
days.
last 3 days. Last 3 days, $2,500. Yeah. So, so if I would work like the last 3 days, because I was really letting it run overnight and so on, to get as much as possible out of it. So that's not normal. But I mean, we are looking at if you are a Fable power user with the current pricing, I think $10K a month.
I was going to say it's going to cost you $100,000 from $2,000. It's going to be 50 times the price, approximately. Yeah. So, but how does that change usage? So you can, and again, I'll let you go in a second, but like, my feeling is that the value in the value chain is not going to accrue to these big frontier models, and that unless you build services around it, you're going to lose all of your business to DeepSeek, to Kimi, to, you know, all the other Chinese, and not just Chinese, but open source models and open weight models, because open source is great, but open weight means now I know what you're doing as well, not just the fact that I can change it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what we are doing and what we're working on is for the software development, we are building a so-called dark factory where we fully automatic create the code using frontier models, and we also employ open source models.
Right.
Both. Having said that, it sounds so cool having an open source model. Yeah, okay. The big advantage is you have control over it. Nobody can switch it off. The downside is you still need to host it. And if you want to have answers within a reasonable amount of time, you need a server which costs you 10 grand or more.
Yeah.
So there's more an upfront investment, I would say.
Right. Yeah, but I think over time, I mean, look, we don't know the answer to this, right? So we can both create conjecture around where we think this is going to go.
Yeah.
But I really feel like we've seen this before, and that the open source models are going to, at the end of the day, win out. But again, we don't know. Okay, look, this has been, not shockingly, I love talking to you. You know this. We've been this since every time we talk. It's a great conversation. I'm going to let you go. Please promise us you'll come back. And as things develop in this space, we'd love to continue to have more conversations with you, just leaning on all the expertise, but also the ongoing sort of experiences that you have, because it's a real good window, I think, into what's happening, not just in the European theater, but also in Asia as well. So thank you so much, Lars, for doing this. I really appreciate your time as always.
Michael, my pleasure. I'm happy to always come back to you and chat about that topic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, Martin, let's bring in Christopher Smith. Christopher, you can hear me okay? It's Michael, actually, but do people call you? It's okay. Believe me, it's okay. Believe me, if Lars is the worst thing you've ever called me, my brother calls me worse things than that, so don't worry about it. Okay. Do you go by Chris or Christopher?
Christopher is what my mother calls me.
Perfect. That's what my mother calls me, Michael. I like it already.
Nice to meet you, Michael.
It's nice to meet you. Can I call you Lars? This would be funny.
I mean, if you want, I mean, look, names are kind of they're quite flexible.
They're ambiguous anyway. Look, we wanted to have you on because we wanted to talk about how post-quantum financial infrastructure is going to help businesses do a whole bunch of things, right? Particularly digital assets, as before like today's encryption assumptions break. And before we do that, tell us a little bit about Quantus.
So basically the issue is, like, people have this idea about quantum computers that they'll be able to do anything instantly, and that's not really accurate. It's a nice first approximation, but there's a narrow set of things that they'll be able to do extremely well, and then there's a broader set that is you get like a sort of moderate speed up, and that sort of narrow range happens to cover the most popular forms of encryption available and used in technology today. Yeah. So unfortunately, that also includes 99% of blockchains. And so we saw this.
What's the relationship between the blockchains and the encryption for people that may not fully understand that?
Sure. So technically the term is cryptography because encryption is like a type of cryptography.
Yep.
But basically all blockchains share one thing in particular is that the digital signatures. So basically, how do you prove that you own some coins? Is you make a signature, a digital signature with a particular key that has a balance.
A cryptographical key, yeah.
That's right. So the idea is that if someone can make a signature with your key, then they can take your funds. And and there's no internet police to call and sort of recall the transaction. So
right. One of the big benefits of decentralized finance, but go ahead.
Right. So it has trade-offs like everything.
Yep.
So now that encryption is or cryptography is threatened by quantum computers. They chose a type. It's called elliptic curve cryptography, and it's very fast. It's very small signatures, small keys. So that's why everyone used it. It was well studied for decades. And however, we've also known for decades that eventually it would have to be expired because there are quantum algorithms. One quantum algorithm in particular, Shor's algorithm, which basically breaks it in a way that like you can't just add more. You can't. Sometimes you can just make the key bigger to fix it. Right. And this is like a complete break of the algorithm. So it means that we have to move to a different system. So
go ahead. Do you want to explain this new system and what do most people misunderstand about this system?
Well, I think the most common question we get is how do you know your system is quantum secure if you don't have a quantum computer?
Right.
And this is
it's a good question.
It's very natural. I think it's good for people to be skeptical, but it's sort of a confusion of layers. This is it's actually a math problem, not a sort of a computer network engineering problem. Right. So you wouldn't hire a red team to go break the algorithm. You'd hire like some mathematicians. And so this is at a certain level of academia and like advanced computer science or mathematics, the idea of analyzing an algorithm against a quantum attacker has existed for quite a while. The way it works is we have mathematical models for how a quantum computer will work, and we've had that for decades before we had the hardware. And so that's why we started building the hardware, is because we realized we could do this thing if we gained sufficient control over reality.
Do we have the hardware yet? And if we don't, like, how close are we to it? Because look, this is obviously something that's been super interesting to me, not just for like the last year, but maybe for the last decade, if not even more than that. But building quantum chips and quantum computing is definitely non-trivial. And in a way, it almost seems to me like nuclear energy. And again, tell me where I'm wrong. I'm not an expert here, but it's like, it's still unstable, right? To build the proper types of chips that can actually do quantum computing. How close are we? How far are we away? And how do I misunderstand this actually as well?
Well, okay. So I think your comparison to nuclear is actually quite insightful. And there's three things that make it difficult to estimate the timeline here.
Go ahead.
One is that future tech is inherently stochastic. It's nonlinear, right? People,
yeah,
it could be.
Can I answer this? It's a dumb question for me, but I just want to some sense of where we are on this time-space continuum where it comes to developing this, because I've read some stuff recently where like Google and IBM seem to be very close to producing sort of stable chips, but then producing them at scale could just take, again, another decade to be able to do. So you can test it in small doses, but this is like hard stuff to produce. Yeah.
It's definitely, I think this is a sort of like a tour de force, or kind of like this represents an incredible level of mastery for our species to get reality to think for us. And in a way that far beyond what classical computers can do. So there's other quantum tech that is easier to build, and we already have the hardware for that. So like quantum sensors, there's a quantum key distribution, and these use very similar, basically the same quantum effects that the quantum computers do, but they're much easier to build. They're not doing full computation, and so the computing thing is the sort of masterpiece, and so. Now, at the same time, so what's publicly available is, there's different hardware labs, and the two kind of dimensions to measure the hardware in is how stable are the qubits? Qubit being quantum bit. So like
Yep.
how many computations can you do with it? And then the other one is how much memory can you sort of hold inside of it? You know, so people talk about how many bits of memory. Well, it's sort of how many qubits of memory. And so right now, I think it's IBM claims to have something with 100 qubits. Now, if you double click on that, there's logical and physical qubits, which is sort of when people want the number to sound big, they say physical.
Right.
And when they want it to sound small, they say logical. But logical is the sort of the one that we're interested in from the point of view of an algorithm, like, and because there's redundance, error correction built into the thing. But basically, here's the thing. So all of this is highly relevant to national security. And this is where your comparison to nuclear really, I think, shines, because you, like, if you spent tens of billions of dollars building something and you can crack everyone's keys, would you tell everyone about it? Right? It's sort of like,
that's the thing. I mean, look, this is why I was thinking about this, and maybe it's because I saw Oppenheimer 6 months ago, but it's like those guys operated in a vacuum. And even if something leaked out of there, people were just like, that's a lie. Like, that's not true. And to be fair, even the guys that were working on it, if you read around it, not just watch the movie, but if you read about it, even they were not like, I don't know, man, even if we get this thing to work, I'm not sure what the implications are of getting this thing to work are. Right? Because once you unlock this thing, look, I have this overriding theory of the universe in which we operate, the Earth, right? Because we're not operating that far away from the Earth. Okay, sure, we've been in space, but not that far away. But the point is that, like, there's so much stuff on the Earth going on that we have no concept and no understanding of. But you can laugh about it, but like, tell me I'm wrong.
No, it's true. No, you're right. I like to say
we live in this like completely highly scientific environment where people are just like, no, that's been solved and this has been solved. But the reality is that, like, it hasn't been solved. And let's say we do unlock quantum computing, but this is like individual atoms or photons that are just like moving around. Even if we solve that and can create a stable environment for this to build the type of stuff that we're talking about, not just on the encryption side, we don't even know what the implication of that's going to be. Yeah?
It's true. I mean, these things are, once the thing exists, you never know how people are going to use it. Especially you're selling it to, like, very rich, high IQ people, and they're certainly going to be creative with it. But I like what you're saying, because it's sort of, I like to say that humility is the soul of science. Like, to really learn new things, we have to not think we know everything.
Exactly.
And so, the thing that connects with this is AI is accelerating everything. And did you see the ECDSA.fail site?
Tell me.
So a few months ago, Google released a paper, or they wrote a paper describing they had a much more efficient implementation of Shor's algorithm. So basically, it was you have this sort of mathematical algorithm, but then, like, how exactly do you stick that into the hardware is a second sort of engineering question. And so they found, like, a way that required half as many resources to implement the same algorithm. And so it brought the moment of being able to crack keys much closer. Now, the U.S. government gave them a gag order and said, "Look, you can't publish this article, this method." So, so they're worried about somebody else getting it, probably China. And so so what they did instead was they published a zero knowledge proof that they had the circuit that has these properties, and that was cool. Actually, nobody had ever done that before. So, but fast forward a few months later, some crypto guys, like blockchain guys, Eigen Labs, they said, I want to know what's in that circuit. I bet we can figure it out. So they made an open platform where anybody can throw their AI at this thing and they started with the best known implementation and tried to match Google's implementation. And it took them 3 days. Only 3 days for the open source community to catch up to Google. And then a few weeks later, they had basically doubled the performance again. So I think this is important because it shows that like the people who were very close to this in the US government, who were worried about the security, dramatically underestimated how easy it would be for AI to match these results and exceed them. So
isn't this part of and this is maybe supplementary to this conversation, but I do think it's kind of interesting in this context. Isn't that part of because I'm looking at Area 51, sorry, because this is another thing that the government tries to hide. Do you know what I mean? Maybe the government tries to hide. We don't know, but that's physical stuff. So it's hard to Do you know what I mean? Like if a UFO lands in Nevada somewhere, someone may hear it or see it, or like there's going to be some artifact of it. And that type of information may be easier to control. But like digital bits and bytes, whether they're qubits or just regular bits and bytes, just like sneaking out onto the internet, it's not that hard to, like, it's super hard to stop that from happening because the incentives for disseminating it are not equal and offsetting for the incentives to not disseminating it, right? Not the least of which is money, but also fame and power and just like, just people being interested in what you're thinking. What's your view on?
World now.
Go ahead.
Sorry. We live in a world now where this information can travel around the world, so quickly. So,
well, faster than someone says, put that thing away.
Absolutely. And so it's, the thing is, so what we saw with this, ECDSA.fail thing is we saw the software side. We saw AI accelerating it and bringing the hardware requirements down. What we don't see, but we can infer must be happening is probably on the hardware side, which is locked away in labs. They're getting gag orders, and they're also being accelerated by AI. I mean, we have to assume that's the case. So
yeah. So you're right. Can I make this point clear? Sure. Sorry, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
The idea that a bunch of open source people who can be just as smart, if not smarter, than the people working at Google or working at Microsoft or wherever, and in some ways can be more organized, right? Because their incentives for doing it, again, are just completely aligned with each other, and they don't care about the money, so they're not trying to get promoted or any of this other kind of crap that people at big companies are trying to do. But that they have access to these AI tools as well and can do this in 2 or 3 days. The suggestion that that's not also possible inside of whether it's the frontier lab companies or Google, Microsoft, Apple, whomever, if you believe that that's not possible, you're deluded. Right. So maybe you're right that this idea that like the technology is not already out there to be able to do this, because it's a scary world. If 98 or you pick a number, because I'm just going to pick one out of thin air, but if 98 or 99% of the world is using encryption that's not ready for quantum hacking, that's a problem. Yeah.
It is. And so that's why, recently Trump did this executive order basically accelerating the cryptography migration timelines for the US government and the government vendors. And they accelerated by 5 years. So they said the deadline was 2035. Now it's 2030. They split it into two types. But so it's a pretty dramatic escalation. And so this is the thing, though, so some systems are easier to upgrade than others. So, for example, like Signal, Private Messenger, iMessage, or Cloudflare, they've already gone post-quantum. And it was, and their users didn't even notice.
Yeah, how would they? I mean, even if you ask a typical user of Telegram, like what the cryptography was around their passwords and that their protection, that no one would have any idea. Do you know what I mean? No, again, I always say it's like asking your mother what TCP/IP is, but she knows her email works. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. So normally you should never make your users think about cryptography.
No.
Blockchain is different because users are
it's all based on cryptography. Yeah.
Right. So now you've got a bunch of users who now suddenly have to be informed about the cryptography they're using, and then they have to push a button to migrate. And of course, lots of things have to be built before they can do that. But really, to boil it down, $2 trillion needs to move. $2 trillion is on pre-quantum blockchain addresses and needs to move to something post-quantum. And that could be on the same chain if it exists. It could be on a different chain like Quantus. It could also be just leave crypto altogether and go to TradFi, buy gold or something.
Yeah, so, that's not going to happen. I mean, what do companies have to do besides move to Quantus? Do you know what I mean? To change the cryptography. Sure. Say it again.
Yeah. So the chains themselves to upgrade. You have to offer an alternative. But
shouldn't these be the first places, like on the bleeding edge of changing this stuff?
Sorry, what was the question?
Shouldn't the blockchains out there be on the bleeding edge of changing this stuff? They're the most incentivized. Because again, if my bank gets hacked, I've got at least $100,000 of FDIC insurance if I'm American, and if it's $1 million, like I can start suing people for negligence. Even if it's not insured. But on the blockchain, it's more just like, sorry, dude, you're on your own, regardless of what that. It could be $10, it could be $10,000, it could be $10 billion. I'm just on my own. Yeah.
That's true. And not only that, so in the bank case, the keys that secure your connection to the bank are most of the time they're not known. It's not like you know, like they're not sitting in a public database.
No.
So whereas, you know, the blockchains, it's all public and that's amazing, but it only works if the keys work. And so yes, you're right. They have you know, I think a big incentive, but it's kind of like a I don't know, we've got other things to think about. Oh, this is like some sort of, you know, long tail risk, and like the price is going down, we need to like pump it, we need to call the KOLs. You know, everybody's focused on their business in the short term, and it's actually a pretty deep surgery to go in and change the signatures there. So you know, it's not a simple like sort of patch over. It's a much harder thing to change than say Cloudflare because of the decentralized nature.
Yeah.
And so it's a real kind of, I think it's a crisis brewing for crypto. And of course there's a lot of opportunity there, and it's a kind of, you know, it's a coming of age thing for the blockchain industry to sort of, okay, you know, if we're going to be disorganized and chaotic, like how are we going to handle a real crisis that affects everyone?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to end up being disorganized and chaotic, because I don't think any business is going to survive that way. Chris, look, thank you so much. This is the fastest 20 minutes of my whole life. There's more to cover, but I really appreciate your time. And let's keep you coming back, actually, if you don't mind, to talk more and more about this as things continue to develop. But thank you again for taking the time to do this today. I really appreciate it, Christopher. Thank you. See, I called you what your mom called you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I got it. And didn't call you Lars again. Thanks, man.
See you.
Okay. Okay, Martin, let's bring Jeff in. Jeff, can you hear me okay? Super. It's great to see you. It's great to have you on the show. I will say this, I have not seen a blue Yeti in quite some time.
Yeah, I found it in our inventory. So hey, I'm going
just
on
like
the pocket.
pulled it out. You're like, okay, we have a mic here. I may as well use this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's great to have you than the AirPod.
You will definitely way better than the
Michael.
AirPods. Definitely way better than the AirPods. So thank you very much for actually being prepared. I really appreciate it. We wanted to have you on.
No problem.
Because we want to talk about how AI-powered no-code databases are going to help companies turn everyday business users, real just like regular frontline guys and gals, into builders of useful and actual systems. But tell us a little bit more about, is it Ragic? Ragic? How do I pronounce it properly?
Ragic. So
Ragic.
It's basically rapid plus magic. So we come up with the name Ragic.
Got it. Plus, I presume the URL was available. Go ahead. Tell us a little bit more about Ragic.
Well, Ragic started as a spreadsheet interface and business application database builder, so that people can build business applications without writing any line of code.
Right.
So you can. It's like designing a spreadsheet form, and it becomes a business application that you can actually use for like keeping track of customer interactions. You can create customer quotations for all kinds of business use, like applications that you would traditionally use an ERP or a CRM system to build, but they can be really customized according to your own company's workflow.
So how does this work inside of a company? And just as an example, and I tell this to Martin all the time, like when I was at Goldman Sachs, I would get all these requests. I was sitting on a portfolio trading desk, right? And I would get all these requests from salespeople to like build a spreadsheet that does this thing, that thing, the other thing. And I'd maintain all these spreadsheets to calculate like real-time feeds and real-time weightings and all this other stuff. But it never got to the point where like I could actually implement that and turn it into a real system that could get rolled out to everybody else because of all the, what are the right words? Like the governance, the rules, and the policies around building software inside of a company like Goldman Sachs, that like the software that we use had to meet certain requirements. But if I just had an Excel spreadsheet on my desk, I could give it to Ryan sitting next to me or Anna sitting behind me, and that's fine. But has that changed? I haven't had that kind of job in like over a decade, but has that changed inside of big institutions where like now I can use Ragic, I can build something, and it's automatically like compliant with all of the other sort of things that need to get built for stuff that IT is working on as well, and that then it can just get rolled out to a larger audience?
Yeah, basically that's what a no-code tool like Ragic is doing. So, using spreadsheet to manage those data, it's like, having a duct tape to fix all your problems. It's like really quick and it's an easy solution that everybody in a business knows how to do that. But, spreadsheets, they are originally they're no-code VisiCalc. So they're for like calculations. So
Wait
they're
a
not a
second.
database.
Did you say no-code VisiCalc?
No, I said spreadsheet.
I know.
Originally, that the first spreadsheet is called VisiCalc.
I know it. I know what it is, but it just makes me laugh that you actually said that. Sorry, go ahead. I love it.
Yeah. It's for you to visually do calculations. So it's not designed to be a data management tool.
No.
So what we think, so we see so many people using these spreadsheets like a duct tape. So, I have these data I want to manage and maybe share with my team. So I just put them in a spreadsheet. So we say, that's good for like one individual, but for the whole team or for the whole company, it's kind of not really safe and it's not really scalable. So so it doesn't really scale to the whole team. So we say we try not to change too much of how you're already designing your forms and your spreadsheets. So we try to take the habit into so that you can build the things like you're doing on the spreadsheet, but we make it into a real database so that you can learn it a lot more quickly and build it a lot more quickly, and you can roll it out to your team with a fully featured database application, not just a spreadsheet. It just looks like a spreadsheet,
right?
But it's a fully featured database.
But what is the backend? Is there a backend Ragic database as well, or is that backend using some sort of SQL thing or some other database that already exists inside the firm or some firm? Yeah.
Yeah. To be exact, Ragic is the database application builder. So there is a database underneath Ragic. So what Ragic does is that it builds the database application based on how you design your spreadsheet. So
and Ragic itself is also the spreadsheet. So it's multifaceted here. It's not like this stuff is still getting built in Excel. It gets built in Ragic, and then the back end, the front end looks like a spreadsheet, and the back end looks like a database. But it's all one thing combined together. Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically a database that has a mask that looks like a spreadsheet, so that business people know how to work with. Because usually a database needs people to write code, but business users they don't know how to write code, but they know Excel so well. So we try to make it so that non-technical business-oriented people can really learn how to use Ragic and create database applications really fast.
And what does it take for uptake to happen, like in a business where people have been super comfortable using Excel for years, and now somebody says you can use Ragic to do this instead? Do you know what I mean? Like, what has to change for that to be comfortable for someone to do it? Do you know what I mean? Because humans are really bad at change management. They're like, I've just been using Excel forever. I'm just going to keep using it. What is this new thing? What does it take for them to do it besides like one new thing that they write?
Yeah, it's actually really easy. But so when we started, this is so easy. They can learn this so easily, really fast, and a lot of users did. But the first step takes a little bit of leap of faith, so that you need to tell yourself that I can do this. This is something that I can do. Usually, this is more psychological because a lot of people can learn this over one afternoon and start building a lot of sheets, and these are real database sheets, not just spreadsheets.
Right.
So it takes a little bit of leap of faith and look at a few videos, going through a few tutorials. They really don't need to write any line of code to build these kind of applications.
What kind of data access is necessary for people to have access to the right data to be able to build this spreadsheet based on? Do you know what I mean? Because normally, if you're writing, if you're like in the IT department or whatever, and you're writing an application, you naturally have access to all the databases that you need. How do I get access as like a frontline user to the right database? How do I not mess up that data? Like all the other sort of governance things around this that are obvious.
In most of the cases, you're not working data in the database. You're just working with the messy spreadsheet folder that you have so many spreadsheet Excel files in there.
Got it. Okay.
So,
but what if I want to? What if I have like a bigger vision? And I'm like, you know what? There's all this data out there. I could backtest this data, like, all this other stuff that I could do if I had access to the right databases. Can I do that using Ragic too, or is it kind of flip over there where that like has to go back to somebody else to do proper development?
That part has historically been harder to build because that would mean you're building a database integration.
Yeah.
So you're syncing data between two applications.
Yep.
So you kind of need to write these RESTful API calls to like throw data to the other application and fetch data from the other application. So that's what tools like Zapier and Make.com or IFTTT do. They do these kind of things.
Right.
And in the age of AI, these just got a lot easier. So basically you could just ask AI to do that part for you. So that has gotten a lot easier over these few years.
So that's the other question I want to ask.
That part, yeah.
Go ahead. So how does Ragic integrate with sort of upcoming artificial intelligence tools, and where does it fit into this sort of orchestration layer as well, so that not only do I have access to, it's kind of like you said, like the messy spreadsheets and the data that sits inside them for me, but I now have access to agentic AI. And once I do, like, things start getting a little bit more complicated, don't they?
Yeah, I think for AI agents on Ragic, there are two major roles they play in. The first one is to bridge the gap I mentioned earlier, is that people are kind of reluctant to learn new things. But they can just tell AI what they want to build, and AI can actually skip over the part where they have to learn how to use Ragic to build their applications. They can just give them their messy spreadsheets and tell AI what kind of application they want, what application is for, and what teams will be using this, what kind of access control they need. And AI can actually build this on this no-code platform. And for us, we think that this is a much more robust way to do this than to kind of vibe code it. Because when AI agents are building these applications, they're not writing a lot of lines of code. They're basically configuring it on a no-code platform like Ragic. If they're writing a lot of code, non-technical users, they have no idea if this is secure or this is like will have a good performance.
Exactly.
But if they're just describing the business logic on a no-code platform, it's more maintainable because all they have to make sure is that the business logic is correct.
So you're suggesting that these frontline users are going to use agentic AI to describe the thing that they're trying to build, and then that will give instruction to Ragic or other no-code platforms that will then build that thing for them, so they don't have to figure out how to give the right instructions themselves. They give it to the agentic AI that then gives it back to Ragic. Does that mean that Ragic is MCP compliant and all the other things that are necessary to make sure that it could actually deal with agents?
Yeah, so that's basically what we're already doing. So if you go on Ragic, we have an AI agent that can build the application for you. And we can also support NCP calls so that they can ask AI to build these Ragic applications. So that's the direction that we're going, and we're improving on that, and trying to make AI help us with this learning curve that we have been experiencing over the years, because want to use Ragic, but they're in the beginning a little bit reluctant to take the time and learn it. But AI can surely help them a lot in this respect.
What does the use of agentic AI do to the cost structure of building with something like Ragic? If it then has to use tokens to be able to sort of affect the things inside of Ragic that it wants to do?
Yeah, and for us, we tried our best to include them in the cost structure, and yeah, it will hurt like most SaaS vendors' margins. So because we cannot like charge for these tokens to the customers very easily.
Not really, because you don't know how many it's going to be. Like, there's no way to know beforehand, right?
Yeah, but still, for the building parts, it kind of solves our long-standing problem of the learning curve. So I definitely think, to help users build Ragic applications, that's kind of a one-time thing, because once they're built and they're comfortable with it, so it solves a big problem for both the customers and Ragic. So we think it's quite a win-win situation, and we're happy to pay up the cost for having AI to help them build the application that they really need and run them on Ragic. So I think it's still a pretty nice solution for us, so that a lot of people who doesn't know Ragic that well, they can just ask AI to build applications for them.
Just so whether either anecdotally or statistically, do you find that guys and gals that build like one thing on Ragic end up building 10 of them, or is it just they just build the one thing and they're like, that's all I really needed? Do you know what I mean?
Okay, yeah. Usually when they build one thing, they're gonna build a lot of things on Ragic. So yeah, especially with larger organizations that doesn't have a lot of support from their like IT department. So we have like government agencies when we do some training courses with them, and once they started to know that they can build this with Ragic, and also they can even ask AI to build it, and they just start to build tons of applications on Ragic, like literally thousands of forms on Ragic to run their processes. I think it's a great use of the product, and yeah, we're just basically really happy that they're using it more and more. And yeah, so usually when you use a no-code platform like this, it kind of when successfully, it changes the culture and changes how they think about things, because they always know that they have this tool, this process, some new process that they encounter, and they can really digitalize it really fast.
So how does it change the relationship between sort of people sitting in the front line and people sitting in the technology support teams, where if I can start building stuff on my own, I kind of don't need the guy in IT to be able to do this for me? Like how does it change that relationship? Because there are some sophisticated applications that I cannot build on my own. But once I realize I can build like some simple stuff or simpler stuff for myself, how does it change the relationship internally as well?
What we see usually is that the IT department just basically oversees the technical aspect, the infrastructure side, and the security side. So most of what they need to do is to sign off on the security aspect of this, to understand what scope of data they're willing to put on Ragic, and what kind of operations that's suitable for this kind of platform. So basically, they're in charge of the infrastructure and overseeing the security. And for the actual business logic and the implementation, it mostly, in my experience, it mostly depends on the team. They usually have like this one key person who's like a champion of the product, and they really understand and loves moving business process into a more digitalized platform, so that their team can work better together. So it usually works like this. And of course, there's a little bit, we often see a little bit of political issues that IT departments sometimes are not that happy with it, because sometimes they've been saying that this would probably take 2 years, and the sales department goes to Ragic
and builds it in like 3 days or 2 days or something.
Yeah, and it kind of embarrassed them. So they're gonna say there's something they're trying to pick some problem, or find some. We do see that happening, but it just.
So one more thing before I let you go. Like, do you see, and again, I asked our previous guest this too, but I want to ask this to as many people as possible, because I want to kind of get a consensus, even if it's just anecdotal. Are you seeing moves to open source and open weight models away from some of the foundational models because the cost performance is just so much better, even if it's only, let's just say 90% is good? Are you seeing this move away of like, I don't understand why I'm paying so much for this thing when this thing is 1/6 or 1/10 the price?
I definitely think we will be moving toward more and more toward open weighted model in the future, especially with the Fable 5 incidents, because that kind of surprised everyone.
You mean the fact that one, it was pulled away, or two, that its performance was released?
They can be pulled away overnight like that.
Well, they were pulled away. Not they can be. They were.
They were. So what if we have built some critical business flow or any kind of flow over that model that depends on that model? So as a contingency plan, I think it would be smart, if anything that's like remotely critical, it needs to be able to run on local models, because you never know what's going to happen with these remote models. Even with they might have a day that just say, our model is just too busy to respond to your request. That doesn't work for critical and business operations. So I think,
So I was going to say, do you see a future where you know, because NVIDIA is talking about building their own sort of AI computers. We've seen AMD come out and say, like, we built this like $3,000 or $4,000 bucks. Do you see like a convergence so that, and again, I always think about this in the context of my old job, sitting on a trading desk, building things that are going to help me trade better and faster. But do you see a situation where there's going to be like a converged machine that can do AI sort of LLM style stuff locally with an open source or an open weight model, but can also handle all the other computing tasks that you want to do? Because right now, you kind of have a Mac Mini sitting over here that handles like all your AI stuff. It's orchestrated, whether you're using OpenClaw or you've built your own orchestrator, that's fine. And then you have your other, whether it's a laptop or a desktop or another Mac Mini that's maybe more powerful, running your regular stuff. And then this Mac Mini over here that's running the AI stuff sends data over to here once it's done doing its inference work. But do you see a situation where that stuff just like all gets combined? It's all on device. And then the access to like these frontier models is no longer necessary because everybody's running stuff locally.
Well, technically these things already exist because
they do,
like
but they're expensive today.
Yeah, and they're extremely slow. So
right,
I don't see anything in the near future that they can run locally reasonably fast enough for people to make any good reasonable use to it. Because if that works, I would love that, because I've
you
been
and everybody else,
testing with the I've been testing those, and I would love to see like these small local models can do some kind of work like this. But right now I'm not seeing that happening yet, and I'm also not seeing like GPUs getting cheaper and more powerful really fast. So I would love for that to happen, but I'm not that optimistic.
So again, just another angle here. The GPUs themselves are not getting fast enough necessarily to do stuff on device. But for most people's use cases, maybe an M7 Pro or an M7 Max will be able to handle this, yeah? Because Apple's trying to optimize for this stuff, yeah?
Yeah, I've been running like some like 10 billion, 20 billion parameter models on my like M1 Max. I also tried it on M5 Max. They're still not nearly as good as running remotely on their infrastructure. So
sure,
right now it doesn't work all that well, and I think it will be pretty hard to solve in a hardware aspect, because GPUs and CPUs are just fundamentally pretty different. We can see
for sure
CPUs running faster and faster, but GPUs, they don't really need to run fast, but they just need to. They need more parallel processing. So it would be harder to. It's a harder hardware problem to solve.
Got it. Well, I'm going to look forward to that getting solved, because I think if you like it, then everybody else in the world is going to like it as well. And again, from a data security and a data sharing standpoint, I think people would rather run this stuff locally as opposed to sending it out onto the internet where like it could possibly have that data get stolen. Okay, Jeff.
Yeah, for enterprise customers, definitely.
For sure. But I mean, I can actually see enterprise customers building sort of their own. It's weird, right? But going back to building their own sort of on-prem data centers just to handle their artificial intelligence stuff, so they can have the speed and the throughput necessary to be able to do this, as opposed to using OpenAI or let's say Anthropic's cloud to have to do this. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. I think it will be kind of necessary in the future.
Okay, Jeff, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. It was great to have you on the show.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody, that is it today for ATP Insights. Thank you again to everybody that joined us on the live show. We will also publish this on YouTube when we are done. Please watch that as well. Give us a thumbs up on this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't cost you anything. And it's just fun to press that button that says subscribe. Follow us on all of our socials, on X, on Instagram, and on LinkedIn. And let us know in the comments. We want to be as interactive with our viewers and our listeners as we possibly can. Let us know in the comments on all the platforms if you have any questions, if you have any ideas for future guests, or just topics that you'd like us to cover. And again, thank you very much for watching us. My name is Michael Wades. Thank you to Martin for all of his help as well. I'm going to say goodbye for now.